Hello, everybody. We are Quality Recap. We are bringing to you guys the highest quality in recap manga. Stay tuned for the next video.
The story began with a young boy, standing with blood dripping from his hands. Holding up a rock, he just hit a man in the head. The man lying on the ground, he held on to his bloody wound and cursed the boy. "Julian, you bastard!" The boy's name was Julian. He had been a slave his entire life, never had anything valuable to his possession. Being a slave meant to be cast out the moment you were born and were denied any honor and personhood. This story is about a slave named Julian who escaped from his old master and began a new journey. In the middle of the sea, there was a ship. It was a merchant ship that was transporting slaves to their destination. On the ship, the captain and his crew member looked at the slaves they were shipping. 100 slaves, our biggest shipment yet. "Captain, are we really going through the load zone? Many ships have sunk passing through there, you know." His crew member was worried about legends of some mythical beast there who hungered for sacrifices. But the captain assured him, saying they were only passing by the edge of it. Since the zone was so dangerous, not even warships of pirates approach it. It meant no one would spot them. Just then, another crew member called for the captain. "Captain, we found a stowaway." On board was a boy who managed to climb on the ship but had gotten captured by the crew. It was none other than Julian. While the crew were deciding to kill him and throw him off, they were stopped by the other slaves. "Stop! He's just a kid." "That's right." The captain scoffed at them, saying he hated bastards who didn't use their heads. Since they left the harbor long ago and only brought food for enough of them, they didn't have any share with a stowaway. Just then, a pregnant slave raised her voice. "I'll split my portion." Julian looked at her shocked. Other slaves began agreeing with her, saying they would share too, while another slave, who seemed to be sick and was coughing, mumbled, "Bunch of good-natured fools." And with that, the captain told him to shut up, but he agreed to the slave's ideas. And so he turned to Julian. "Welcome aboard. Guess you're slave number 101. Later that day, under the cabin, the pregnant slave asked why Julian sneaked on the board, to which he answered he heard that they could earn a living if they went to the continent, so he was going to try and buy his freedom. Julian asked her why she covered for him, to which the lady said as a slave, no one treated them with basic human decency. That's why they value compassion. It let them maintain their pride as human beings, she said, holding on to something wrapped in cloth. Turns out, it was a knife that her husband gave a long time ago, but she didn't have the money to maintain it, so it rusted over. Looking at the knife, Julian offered to polish it for her, to which she accepted. While he was doing so, the old slave looked at him and asked where he learned how to do it, to which Julian told him his backstory. As a kid, his mother sold him for a pittance, and his master was a blacksmith. During that time, he did all kinds of chores, while covered in ash and soot, and the master would burn him with heated metal rods if he ever made even the slightest mistake. The lady looked at his arms, which were covered in scars, and finally understood the cause. Julian continued, "When it seemed like he was finally about to kill me, I grabbed a nearby grindstone and cracked his skull open. I have never been treated with compassion before. Not by anyone, not even my own mother, so I don't know the first thing about stuff like that." Having done the polishing, he handed the knife to her, telling her to hide it carefully. The lady thanked him and asked for his name. She then introduced herself as Mira. That night, while other slaves were sleeping, Mira did not lie down. She sat against the wall singing lullabies to her unborn baby. Julian noticed her. He got up and got close to her. He asked when the baby would be born, to which Mira answered, "Soon enough." She then brought Julian's hand to her stomach. Julian touched and said, "It feels strange. It's moving." "Yep, it's kicking because it's full of life," Mira answered. Julian then looked at Mira's happy smile as she continued, "My only hope is that this baby is born safe and sound and lives a happy life. If I can have that one wish, I don't mind suffering for the rest of my life." Julian was perplexed by her love. "Why would you go that far?" "Julian, what's wrong?" "I'm not sure. My chest feels tight. My mother sold me off, and this entire time I thought that was normal. Now that I know mothers like you exist, it's really hard to bear." Hearing this, Mira couldn't help but pull Julian close to her. She hugged him tightly, saying, "You grew up in this cruel world, and it's been rough, I'm sure. But please don't despair. From here on out, I want you to know this. Even in a world like this, love and kindness do exist, so I beg you, don't give up on your fellow man." That night, Julian went to sleep, but before that, he held up his hand and recalled the feeling when Mira hugged him tightly. He felt warm. The next day, slaves were called out by the crew to clean the ship. Some slaves argued, asking if they could let Mira pass without working, since she was pregnant, but the crew member refused. Julian heard this. He said that he would do both Mira's part and his, but the crew member suddenly punched him in the face. He was pissed off of Julian's attitude. But Julian didn't falter. He looked up and said, "Let him do Mira's part, since he could work harder than a pregnant woman." Hearing this, the crew member scoffed. "How virtuous of you. But if you half-ass it, I'm gonna kill you, damn piece of filth." Looking at Julian, Mira asked if he was all right, but he assured her, telling her to get some rest. Hearing this, Mira smiled and thanked him. The other slaves saw his act. They were somewhat influenced by it. Later that day, during the meal, the old slave gave Julian some of his food, saying he didn't need much. The coughing slave saw this and gave the old guy his share of food, saying since the old guy is the oldest, he should eat properly. If he were to collapse, it would only bring them more work.
Julian looked at his bread for a moment. He then decided to give the coughing man half of his bread, but the guy refused, saying he hadn't stooped so low as to accept food from a kid. Mira heard this. She told Julian what he meant was that it was okay for Julian to eat it all. That night, while everyone was sleeping, Mira continued sitting against the wall, singing lullabies. Julian noticed this. He asked her if she couldn't sleep, to which he answered that she got nauseous if she lay down, and she would get more rest if she sat up and took it easy. Hearing this, Julian said that carrying a child seemed tough. He complimented Mira. "You're amazing, Mira." Hearing this, Mira said, "It's the first time someone's praised me so wholeheartedly like that, but I don't think I deserve it. I'm not as amazing of a mother as you think." Putting her hand on Julian's face, she continued, "I had a son about your age, but he was killed by slave traders. He died while trying to protect me and my baby. I'm a mother who couldn't save her own son. To this day, I still clearly remember his smile." Recalling her son's smile, she said, "I know I'm a failure as a mother, but even so, my son gave up his life for this baby, so all I want is for it to be born safely. Though, I can't shake my anxiety though. If my baby were to be born into a world like this, would it even be able to find happiness?" While she was feeling helpless, Julian stood up and got close to her. Parents mean the whole world to children. Putting his hand on Mira's face, he said, "I can tell how much you love your baby, Mira, so I'm sure the baby who you love so dearly will find happiness," he said as he hugged her this time, assuring her, "I'm praying for their happiness too." Mira was relieved. She then thanked Julian. The next day, while they were working, Julian looked at Mira and thought, "There's something I realized. A mother doesn't cherish her child just because she's a mother. When you feel a connection with another person, that's when you start caring for each other. That's gotta be it. I can sense the bond between Mira and her baby. Because I was sold off by my own mother, I never once experienced that irreplaceable bond you're supposed to have between mother and child." Thinking for a moment, he thought that he might never be able to make that sort of connection again, which frightened him. Just like that, night came. While other slaves were still discussing how they could finish their duty when the sun had gone, Mira called for Julian to come with her. Julian followed her to the side of the ship, to which he was met with a breathtaking view from the sky. Millions of stars glowed upon the sky, their light only illuminated once the sun had gone. Wow! Julian was speechless. Mira looked at him. She smiled and said,
"Hey, Julian, I was thinking, if we're ever liberated and free to do whatever we want, why don't we live together?" she said, with a smile brightened by the starry sky. "Dog, please don't put death flags in like that." Julian couldn't respond, while Mira continued saying that she would be happy if he was by her side. Julian just bowed his head down to the handrail, trying to hide his expression. He was moved by the connection that he thought he would never get to experience was forming between him and Mira. "I'll think it over," he said, turning away, while Mira laughed. "Ha ha, all right. Thank you." That night, while everyone was sleeping, Julian sat beside Mira. Leaning together, they shared a good night's sleep. But their moment wouldn't last long, as outside the ship was going through a storm. But it seemed it was more than that, as a crew member called out to the captain. "Captain, we're getting swept up by the current. We're getting pulled and allowed." "That can't be. I made sure we were on a route that avoided it. We're nowhere near where the map says we should be." "Captain, something's trying to pull us in. Something that lives there." "What are you on about? We'll be in the clear if we lighten the load." With a cold gaze, the captain said, "We'll do it here." With that, the slaves were all called out to the front, and while they were confused as to why they were called out, the old slave immediately got stabbed in the back by the crew member, and before the shocked eyes of everyone, the old man dropped to the ground. "What are you doing?" Mira asked, to which the captain turned around to look at them with a chilling look. "I told you, scum who go about their days without a single thought in their heads, I despise them. The sick, the children, pregnant woman, the elderly, you're a worthless bunch who can only do unsatisfactory work. I bought you all for a cheap sum. You're nothing more than the defective goods no one wanted. But well, if there's an accident, that's a different story. Since you're all my property, I can exchange you for insurance money. It's the easiest way to make profit, while ensuring our safety in this storm. Not even military ships approach this part of the seas, so there's no risk of any witnesses at all." Just then, the old guy tried to scream, telling them to run. Everyone panicked, but the captain scoffed, saying they were on a ship in the middle of the sea. There was nowhere to run. And the crew member began killing everyone. The sick slave tried to cover for Julian, telling him to go find Mira, but then he was also struck down. And before Julian's eyes, everyone was getting killed one by one, devoured by the sound of horror, of swords clashing, of flesh getting torn apart. And in no time, all the slaves were killed, their body getting thrown down the ocean. Though the captain was impressed, looking at Mira and Julian, who were the last ones to survive, he noted how every last of the slaves protected the pregnant woman and the kid, though all that effort would be in vain, because after all, they were all worthless. Earning him some easy money would be their best use. He then ordered the crew member to finish them off, but just then, the crew member noticed something was off. He couldn't move his body, and suddenly, raindrops around them began to stop, frozen in midair. What? There's no way. The captain couldn't believe it. Behind the ship, massive tentacles emerged from under the sea. Mira and Julian looked back to see. Those tentacles began to swirl around, entangled in each other, and before the horrified eyes of them, it began forming into a human-like silhouette. Stepping foot onto the ship, the creature asked, "Do you seek my blessing?" Julian and Mira looked at the creature. They were horrified. The creature continued, 1. You must sacrifice a large number of souls. 2. You must sacrifice a pure love. I shall grant my blessing to the one who satisfied these 2 conditions. The first condition has already been satisfied. The second one can be done by either one of you. Therefore, you 2 must decide. 1 shall be my sacrifice. 1 shall die, while the other shall be blessed and obtain great power. Julian was terrified. He asked, "What the hell are you saying? What the heck are you?" But the creature replied, "Who or what I am is not important. What I take, I grant in its stead, and I shall aid the one who remains. Now make your choice. Which one of you will lose your pure love?" Julian heard this. He turned to look at Mira, seeing her holding her belly, terrified. He was desperate. He then looked at her unborn child and closed his eyes, trying to steel his resolve. "You said the one left behind will be saved, right?" The creature confirmed so. Julian then stood up and said, "Then I'll offer my life. Mira, you need to deliver your baby, no matter what." Hearing this, Mira bowed down, biting her lips in frustration. She couldn't bring herself to stop him. After all, she wanted to save her baby. But just as she heard Julian telling her to love happily, she looked up at Julian, just to witness his bitter smile as he was ready to bid farewell. And for a moment, his smile reminded her of her late son's smile. Only at that moment did she realize she had already loved him like her own child. Julian was about to go, but his hand was held back. It was Mira. Panting in fear, she took out her knife, saying that she wouldn't let it happen again. Julian looked at the wrapped cloth. He immediately realized it was her knife, but it was too late, as Mira took the cloth out and pointed the knife into her own belly. She said, "I won't let another one of my children die. Julian, I leave your new sibling in your care, okay? Stop!" Julian tried to stop her, but she had already stabbed the knife into her belly, beginning to pry it open in an attempt to deliver the baby right away. "Ugh, no matter what, I absolutely won't let anything happen to you. Ugh, I don't give a damn what happened to me, so please be born and live." And before Julian's terrified eyes, a faint cry began to echo. Mira successfully delivered her baby. She hugged the baby tightly, crying in relief. "It's a girl! I'll name her Diana." Putting the baby in Julian's hand, she hugged both of them and said, "I love you both so much." Julian couldn't bring himself to say anything. Mira then dragged her flaring organs with her to the side of the ship. She looked at him with a pained smile before throwing herself into the ocean. And just like that, the second condition was satisfied. The creature then said, "I am satisfied. Now state your wish. Strength shall emerge from the pit of your despair."
Julian looked at the captain and his crew. He remembered his words from earlier, saying how all of their lives were worthless. He turned to the creature and said, "I want proof that everyone's lives, that Mira's life wasn't a waste." Hearing this, the creature replied, "Then you shall have it." It then covered Julian with a thick black smoke. The smoke entered Julian's body, spreading across, granting him new power. The creature then allowed the crew to move, and while they were still confused of what just happened, the captain ordered them to kill both Julian and the creature, saying it might sell for a high price. But immediately, Julian turned back. He shot out a large smoke screen, distracting the crew, and in an instant, he blitzed the captain before the others could even react. Holding the captain against the wall, they realized his new power was not to be taken lightly. Throwing the captain to the ground, Julian asked, "What's going on?" The creature then explained, "I have granted the life force of 100 lives. In exchange, their power, their speed, their endurance, their reflexes, all have been bestowed upon you." Julian heard this and finally understood his newfound power. He looked at the baby, telling her to wait for a little longer, while he went to deal with the rest of the crew. Standing before Julian, all of the crew began charging at him, but just as Julian focused up, he started massacring all of them, and in no time, on the ship, there was only him standing between piles of corpses. Julian thought that it was finally over. He walked to the baby, seeing that she was still alive and well, he was relieved. But just then, a spear impaled him in the neck, leaving him stumbling to the ground. It was none other than the captain, who was still alive and playing dead, waiting for the right moment. "You let your guard down, you fool. I'll get the final laugh." Little did he know, black smoke started spooling out of Julian's wound. Something wasn't right, and in no time, his wound closed. While Julian himself was still confused, the creature began explaining,
You have nothing to fear. It should go without saying that you've gained 100 lives as well. The captain was in shock. He tried crawling away, but Julian had already noticed him. Then as Julian walked up to him, the captain tried to negotiate. "Wait, I'll split my money with you. I'll give you a third. That's quite a sum, you know." But as an answer to him, Julian looked at him with disgust before winding up his fist. "How about you think with that head of yours?" Julian then finished the captain off. After that, Julian brought the baby with him. Getting down to a small boat, he let the creature devour the ship. Before they head off, the creature talked to him. "You offered the sea something you held dear. Hereafter, the sea will no longer bear its fang at you. This boat will reach the shore on its own within a day. You need not row. May fortune favor you." The creature then disappeared into the deep ocean. The baby was in Julian's arm. He looked at her, and as the baby gripped his finger, Julian couldn't help but tear up. "Entire life, I've never had anything valuable in my possession. Until now, that is." And with that, soaking in rays of sunrise, with the sound of a child crying, full of life, their new journey began.
The scene then transitioned to a memory Julian had when he was with Mira. Mira talked about how babies could only express their need through crying since they had no other way. Crying was how they tried to call for someone to be with them. Mira thought that being born into a world they knew nothing about was frightening. That's why we needed to be with them to assure them. When she thought of it that way, it calmed her also, and she didn't feel lonely anymore. Back to the present, Julian was trying his best to calm Diana's crying down. Just then, he noticed debris floating toward him. He looked up to see that in front of them was a shipwreck. Though he was promised smooth sailing, it seemed some beings of the sea weren't happy with it. "It's not fair," a voice spoke up, which startled Julian. He turned around to see that a disgusting-looking face was emerging from the water, saying they were envious. Those were sea monsters, and it seemed they were mad that the octopus being ensured his safety. "Why? You were not to harm them. Those were her orders. It's unacceptable. You're nothing but lowly landwalkers, yet she bestowed her blessing on the likes of you. I'm gonna kill and eat you, even if I'm punished for it." Do they not care, bro? And as Julian was still confused, one of the monsters decided to crawl onto the boat. Julian was startled and jumped onto the shipwreck. The monsters seemed to resent him, wanting to eat him. But as they were scraping onto the ship without actually climbing up, Julian noticed this. He asked if those monsters were with the octopus being. He then noted that since it seemed they couldn't climb up, they treated the ship as land. The monsters were fuming. They began swarming under the ship. "Cocky brat, how long will that land of yours last? My brethren have already begun to destroy the bottom of the ship. Before long, both you and your baby will be our food." Hearing this, Julian shivered. Holding on to Diana, he closed his eyes and remembered Mira and the other slaves who sacrificed their lives so he could live his. He then steeled his resolve and activated his power. Putting Diana down, he snapped a wooden pole nearby, making it a spear, before jumping down to the monster head-on, saying, "Why don't you choke on this first?" A big monster then charged at him, trying to swallow him whole. They began their fight underwater. Julian grabbed onto the monster, then started stabbing it in the back. The monster screamed. It shot its sharp tentacles at him, impaling him. Julian was in pain. He tried to deflect and cut off the rest of the tentacles. The monster then charged at him, trying to attack with its fang, but Julian narrowly dodged. He wound up his spear and slashed at the monster, but it missed. The monster then countered with another flurry of impaling tentacles, piercing through him. Julian trying to thug through the pain, he thought, "I can't keep up. The attacks are too quick. How do you like this?" He then grabbed the tentacles that were stuck to his body and pulled the monster back at him. Then he started prying its back open. "Arg!" the monster screamed. "Let go!" "Like hell I will." Julian then continued cutting up the monster. Suddenly, he felt a nauseous sense. His visions were blurred. His body began twitching, unable to move as he pleased. He tried to look at the monster, to see that it looked back at him, smiling, with weird secretion oozing out from the tip of its tentacle. It was poison. Julian then slumped, sinking down the ocean, while the monster smirked. "I know you have 100 lives. I was there when it happened.
You'll revive and die until all your miserable lives are spent, sink to the ocean's depth, and suffer." The monster then looked up at the boat above where Diana was and said, "That baby is merely a burden thrust upon you. A heavy responsibility, isn't it? From now on, your life will be bound by that heavy burden. How is that any different from being a slave? I feel sorry for the baby too. Do you intend to make it live a life without its mother? Don't you see, if you die here, you can reunite with everyone." The monster's words slowly had an effect on Julian, and he started to feel desperate. But the monster continued, "All things return to the sea in the end. I won't be just you. That baby will join its mother too. The three of you can be together here." Julian, still sinking down to the bottom, he thought, "Is that true? If I die here, I'll see everyone again? I can be with Mira?" He then recalled the day that he was sold by his mother, looking at his mother walking away with a tiny amount of silver coins in her hands and the happy look on her face. He thought, "Mom, I was just a child, but even back then I understood. I knew I was being sold. You didn't look back, not even once. I remember it all. The pain of my burns and the bitter cold of sleeping in a livestock barn in winter." He recalled himself sleeping in the barn, but the cold and the pain was too much for him to handle, and he couldn't help but tear up. "But I also remember Mira's warmth and the anguish I felt when I lost her." And as Julian continued to sink down to the bottom, he could see, not far away, waiting for him, was Mira. "Come join me, Julian," she said as she opened her arms, welcoming him under the pit of the sea. "Mira." Julian was slowly losing his consciousness. "All I ever wanted was someone who wouldn't leave me alone," he thought, as he was about to give up and present his life to the sea. Just then, over the surface, the monsters were tearing down the ship where Diana was in. The crumble startled her, causing her to cry loudly. Her crying reached down to Julian, surprising him. He turned around and said, "She's crying." He then remembered Mira's words. "Babies can only express their needs by crying. That's why they cry as hard as they can when they need someone. They're saying, 'Please don't leave me alone.'" Julian thought of Diana's crying face, which was just like him back then, and he understood what he needed to do. He then activated his power, and before the big monster could grasp the situation, Julian started channeling his power and threw out a large smoke screen. The monster was covered in smoke. It told Julian that there was no point in hiding since he was already poisoned. But, well, running ain't his thing. As from inside the smoke, Julian lunged out at the monster and punched it in the face. "What? How are you able to move?" Julian then charged at the monster. He grabbed the spear that was stuck on the monster from earlier, ready for round 2. The monster finally understood what was happening. It turned out Julian expelled the poison, along with the smoke screen that he bursted out. Julian then ran along the monster's body, slicing it from tail to head. The monster cried out in pain, but it was too late. In a swift movement, he cleaved the monster in half. He then called out for Diana and tried to swim up to her, but his way was blocked by the other monsters at the surface. Though they were surprised Julian killed the big one, it didn't really matter for them, as they swarmed him, ready to finish him off. Both sides then charged at each other. Julian shouted, "Out of my way!" He then started slicing each of them off, fighting in a bloodbath. One man going against a sea of monsters in order to protect those who were dear to him. The brawl continued, with the sound of weapons slicing through flesh, the sound of claws and fangs digging deep into one's body, blood spilling all over the ocean, creating a dark red cloud under the water. After a while, we could see piles of monster corpses floating on the surface, and on a boat over the distance, Julian was carrying Diana. His body was completely beaten up, his clothes were tattered, soaked with blood and seawater. Holding on to Diana, he said, "I'm sorry, Diana. I promise I'll always be with you." He then thought to himself, "That's right, I'm not alone." Later that day, their boat slowly floated toward land. Julian finally noticed it. "It's the shore. Look, Diana, we've reached land." Diana heard this. She let out some baby words to him, to which he just smiled. Yeah, I've had enough of the sea, too. At last, they finally managed to reach land, carrying Diana to the shore. Julian thought about what he had to do next, but suddenly his legs gave way and he stumbled down. It seemed he had lost too much blood. On top of that, he was starving and exhausted. He was losing consciousness. Just then, he looked up to find a young girl standing in front of him. She was holding a spear with a fish stuck on the tip. She looked at them and mused, "A baby! So adorable!" Just then, behind her, a tall, huge person walked up to them. The person wore heavy armor, with a helmet covering their whole face. They stood looming over Julian, which made him wary. What the heck? He's huge. Is he a soldier? In front of their intimidating presence, Julian gestured to the girl to hide behind him while he got ready to fight. But the girl suddenly ran toward the knight, calling them Engvall. It seemed they knew each other. "That kid, he's hurt," the girl said, to which the knight named Engvall asked Julian what a child and a baby were doing all alone, with grave injuries. Engvall asked where their parents were. Hearing this, Julian's expression was pained. "She died in my place, so we could live on." Engvall heard this. He said, "Follow me. Babies need milk to live. We have some goat's milk you can use. Your wounds need tending too." Julian hesitated, but Engvall said that it wouldn't sit right with him to let them die alone, so Julian finally accepted to come with them. They were then brought to a small house near a river, where Engvall called out to the young girl, "Titi, hand me a needle, thread, and some bandages. Bring over some new clothes too." To which the young girl, named Titi, said, "Okay." Engvall then took a look at Julian's injuries, wondering what could have happened. She was also surprised at how quickly the wound healed. Julian also noticed it. On top of that, he was too absorbed in the fight he didn't even realize he was breathing underwater. The more he used that power, the more he could feel his body adapting to it. After that, Engvall got Julian some clothes, though it seemed a little big for him, but it was good enough. Engvall then treated Julian to a proper meal. Julian looked at the food, his eyes lit up, but he said he didn't have the money to pay her. Hearing this, Engvall assured him that she was never going to take his money. Julian was surprised. He asked why she would do it, to which she answered, "It's only natural to care for children and babies. I don't need a reason for it." Julian heard this. He remembered the kindness Mira once showed him. He then smiled and said, "Thank you." Julian then asked for a clean cloth. He dipped it into the bowl of goat's milk and fed Diana with it. Titi and Engvall looked at him. They smiled. After that, they let him use the bedroom on the second floor, to which he thanked them, saying he would return the favor one day. They then properly introduced each other, stating their name. That night, Julian stumbled onto the bed, saying, "I'm at my limit. I'm gonna pass out. I couldn't stay awake any longer if I tried. I can finally rest." Or so he thought. That night, the room was filled by the sound of Diana's crying, and obviously Julian couldn't sleep at all. Holding on to Diana, he said, "Shh, it's okay. I can see you're cranky, but please let me sleep. I'm begging you." But to answer his plea, Diana just started crying louder. It's no use. Maybe some fresh air will help. Julian brought Diana outside for a breather. Walking down to the river, he noticed Engvall's armor laying neatly on the ground. And down the river, a long-haired woman was washing herself. It was Engvall. Damn, muscle mommy. "What's wrong? Can't sleep?" she asked, walking towards Julian. Julian replied, Yeah, Diana wouldn't stop crying." Looking at Engvall, he said, "I didn't realize you were a woman." "Yep, I never go out without my armor on, because I have a duty as a soldier to serve this country." After that, Engvall puts her casual clothes on, and they sit together. Looking at Julian, she asked, "Is there something weighing on your conscience?" "Huh? I can sense it wherever you look at her." Hearing this, Julian flustered. He looked at Diana and said, "Diana doesn't know that her mom died instead of me. It's all my fault. She can't even get angry and scream at me. She's too small. Back then, I should have stopped her. I should have died instead of Mira. If I had died, they could have lived as a mother and daughter. They would have been a proper family. Angval looked at him. She said, "There's no one right way to be a family. TT and I aren't related by blood, but we're family nonetheless. Family is what you make of it. It's not something that's predetermined or set in stone. Tell me, Julian, what kind of family do you want to give Diana? What sort of life do you envision for her?" Julian heard this and looked at Diana for a while and said, "All the things I've never had, all the things I've lost. I want her to have all of them. A home, food to eat, wealth, freedom, and," he said as he recalled Mira's gentle smile, "love. I want her to live without any worries. I want to show her a world free from any suffering." Hearing this, Angval said, "That's quite a task to undertake. You will have to fight with all your strength on her behalf." "What will I have to fight?" "This unforgiving world. In this life, there's neither time to hesitate nor room for guilt. You need to give your all to survive and raise her. That's how you give her a happy life. Then maybe there'll come a day when you can forgive yourself." Angval got close to Julian. "One surefire way to achieve that is money. You need to earn a living." Money? "Trust me on this. Money can buy your happiness." "I'm not so sure about that." "Let's look for a job you can do next time. But for now, you should rest first," she said as she patted Julian's head. "Don't try to do everything on your own, not while you're still full of grief. I'll take care of you until those wounds have healed." Hearing this, Julian thanked her. He said he hadn't met many kind people like her, only about 100, to which Angval was flabbergasted. That's a hell of a lot of people. And just like that, half a year has gone by. We could see TT calling out to Julian to come for lunch, to which Julian, his wounds have fully healed, only leaving scars on his face. He answered TT and about to come in. Just then, Diana tried calling out to something in the forest nearby. Julian looked up, but he didn't see anything. Unbeknownst to him, there was, in fact, something that only Diana could see. A black goat was lurking within the shadowy depths.
The story then continued. Back in the past, when Julian was still a slave and a blacksmith, he could hear his master and his friends talk about him from afar. They were saying how buying him was such a waste of money. But the master said that it was fine, since he would dispose of him once he was no longer useful. After all, he was sold off by his mother. There was no lower than that. If he couldn't ever live a normal life, then he was better off dead. Back to the present, Julian said he wanted to find work. He wanted to earn money and repay Angval and TT. They then decided to check out a village nearby. But their journey of finding a job for him would prove harder than they thought. As in the village, the villagers rejected him. Since he was still a kid, they believed he would turn out to be a burden for them. Julian tried to plead for the job, but the villagers said that he would have to prove his worth. They then took him to a cave nearby. That cave is where we mine for iron. Look at the entry on the left. See how it's collapsed in and blocked off? I want you to remove all those boulders. If you can do it within a day, we'll take you on. Luckily, it's only 10 meters deep. Keep in mind that the boulders get larger the deeper you go. Bro, the fuck these fuckers talking about? Bro, I bet none of them could do that on their own. They just wanted to bully Julian. Angval asked, "That's crazy. Even a grown adult can't lift all that. Don't you think you're being way too rough on him?" Hearing this, the narrator, who was making the script, said, "Yeah, bro, I agree with her. That's too much." But unfortunately, he wasn't in the story to voice his thoughts to them, so he just continued on with the script. The villager then said, "No one's forcing you to do it." But Julian, with his gaze hardened, said that he would do it. He then began moving some of the first rocks out. He thought to himself, "To be honest, that was a piece of cake. If I can keep this up, I might be able to do it." Or so he thought, as just a little while later, the whole village was getting covered by Julian screaming. The prolonged strain from carrying too many rocks that was getting bigger and bigger was putting heavy strain on his body. Putting down the rock, he was just a little over half the work. The work continued.
Julian tried his best to carry a bag of smaller rocks. His steps were heavy. He then tripped over and spilled all the rocks out. Panting for breath, he said he couldn't move his hands or legs anymore. Damn it. But as he looked at Diana calling for him, he steeled his resolve and put the rocks back in the bag. He then tried to stand up, but he couldn't, so he crawled. Looking at Julian, who was dragging himself through the dirt ground in immense pain, Titi was worried for him. As he put his hands and legs before another, he thought to himself, "What the hell am I doing? Do I really need to work until I'm crawling on my knees? This is so tiring." Suddenly, a hand reached out and pulled him back. It was the slaves from before who resided inside his mind. They told him to use their power, saying it would be no sweat that way. As they said that, power markings started crackling out from Julian's eyes, but he stopped midway. Looking at them, he said, "Whenever I'm in a bind, someone always saves me. I've never been able to do anything by my own strength, like back on the ship. I'm just a kid who's alive by the efforts of others. Don't go easy on me. How can I ever bring you peace if I can't be trusted to handle myself?" Recalling Mira's words asking him to take care of Diana, he said he has a promise to fulfill, so he was going to handle it alone. The slaves heard this, they looked at him and smiled gently. Back outside, some of the villagers asked if someone should stop him, and he had done enough. He was just a kid, but he was running himself ragged. But Angval stopped them midway. She said, "You're the ones who started this. Just shut up and watch." And just like that, the sun set, and before the slave's eyes, Julian stood there. Behind him were mountains of rocks. His clothes ragged, his hands were numb. He was covered in sweat and dirt. He looked up at them, saying, "That's all of them." The villager who proposed the challenge then held out a pouch of money to Julian. He said, "I was wrong. You're more than qualified for the job. This is your compensation." He then bowed down to Julian. "From here on out, you're a fellow worker. We'll be glad to have you." Wow, okay, I left the guy slide on that one. I thought he was going to lowball Julian. Julian heard this. He finally let out a smile. Once they got back home, Julian took the towel that Mira used to cover Diana when she gave birth to her. The towel was ragged, covered by dried blood. He buried it under a layer of dirt, then put a cross on it, making her a grave. Kneeling in front of the grave, he prayed, "Mira, it's me. Please be at peace and watch over us." And with that, their lives continued. In no time, Diana had finally been able to crawl on her own. Julian called out to Angval and Titi to come take a look. Both of them were surprised and happy. Titi joked, "You're amazing, Diana. You're even better at crawling than Julian." Julian heard this. He laughed it off, saying Titi was brutal with her joke. Even Angval started to laugh. Julian scoffed, "Angval, not you too." "Sorry, it was so savage I was startled to laughter. And you were working so hard, too." Julian heard this. He was somewhat ticked off. Kicking someone already down? And just like that, together, the four of them collect little moments of happiness. Their lives went on. After getting the job, Julian worked with a family. The wife named Marie. She was also the wet nurse for Diana. She took care of her while Julian worked. The husband was Joseph. He was Julian's workmate. He was a good man and treated him as his equal. That day, they were tasked with chopping firewood for the village. Julian thought that it was nice working in the forest. The air was fresh, the scenery was beautiful, and the animals and plants are all thriving and full of life. He enjoyed working and felt fulfilled. Seeing him, Joseph smiled and asked, "Exciting, isn't it?" He then said that their kid was the same age as Diana, and they would be best friends in the future, and he couldn't wait to see how they would grow up. To which Julian said that he felt the same. After a while, Angval and Titi came, bringing them their lunch. And as they were having the meal together, Angval asked Joseph if he had noticed anything unusual about the forest. Joseph said he hadn't noticed anything weird, though they couldn't know for sure. After all, a major part of the continent was forests. Who knew what could be in the deeper part? Joseph's father once said to him, "The depths of the forest are a vast unknown. It's a sacred domain for gods and beings beyond our comprehension. No man who steps foot there can ever return." Joseph then told Angval she should visit his father for more information, though he had gone old and his mind was muddled. Angval responded, saying she'd already tried to do so, but his father didn't want anything to do with her. Hearing this, Joseph offered to help her meet his father, to which Engvall thanked him. After that, back at their home, Julian asked Engvall why she wanted to investigate the forest, to which Engvall explained that it was the king himself who requested it be done. She then explained that she served under the king of this country. He had ruled over this country for over 100 years. 100 years? Julian was surprised. How has he lived that long? Engvall heard this. She answered, I don't know. He's been protecting this country throughout his reign by using mysterious, godlike powers. The citizens hail him as the Supreme Lord. Hearing this, Julian was interested in his godlike power. It seemed he had something to do with Julian's own circumstance. Engvall then continued, one of his close aides is a prophetess who supports him from the shadows. She has foreseen his majesty's death. As the prophetess said, darkness will engulf the world in flames. Harbinger of your downfall, your guiding star shall fade and lead to your demise. Night shall fall upon the land. You must seek and destroy this calamity. Should you fail, you will be the one destroyed. It shall appear within the forest. Julian heard this. He questioned the accuracy of the prophecy, to which Engvall said that she had never been wrong. She then continued, back when she was young, the king saved her and her family. She was indebted to him. That was why she became a soldier, to serve my king and country. Julian then asked if she had to do it all by herself, but she assured him that many other soldiers are investigating various parts of the forest. She then told Julian and Titi to let her know if they found anything strange. Later that day, Joseph led them to his father's house, saying they wanted to talk about the woods.
The father heard this. He stared for a while and said, What's that? The woods. Aye, I've heard strange tales about them since long ago. Such as, can you tell me? The father heard this, but he just kept staring at nothing, losing focus. Engvall was worried. Sir, are you all right? I'm fine, he said. Fairies, monsters, evil spirits, witches, those sorts of tales. People make them up to understand what they don't know. True or not, I can't say. All I know is there's no reason to get involved with these beings. If we leave them alone, we can coexist in peace. You shouldn't go poking around the forest all reckless-like. Having said that, the father asked where his spoon was, though it was still on his hand the whole time. After that, Joseph said that they would go hunting the next day, and they would let Engvall know if there was anything strange. That night, Julian brought Diana out for a breather like usual. He looked at her and smiled, noting how she must love the night breeze. But Diana just kept excitedly pointing, calling out to something in the woods. Then Julian said, Nothing's there. Let's head inside, it's getting chilly. But before they left, Julian turned back to the woods. He was somewhat worried. Nothing's there, right? The next day came. We could see in the village the villagers were gathering to discuss something urgent, and Engvall was there also. Some of the villagers who went hunting with Joseph had run back. Panting for breath, they were trying to say something. One of the villagers spoke up. Enough! I can't make heads or tails of what you're saying. Cut to the chase. I'm telling you, Joseph is gone. He was taken by something in the forest. People then asked if it was a bear, but the hunters said they didn't think so. It happened when Joseph was checking the rabbit traps like always. He was then pulled away by some kind of sinister beast or monsters. Marie heard this. She feared if something bad happened to her husband, but Engvall assured her, saying they would organize a search party to find him around the edges, while she herself would head to the depth. Just then, Joseph's father appeared, saying he would go with them. He asked who was the person that disappeared, and upon finding out that it was Joseph, he was certain that Joseph was fine. After all, he was the one who taught Joseph how to survive in the forest. Everyone heard him and were relieved a little, but the father then asked where his bow was, even though it was still on his back the whole time. Julian looked at them, and he thought that he could use his power to help them, but just as he asked to go with them, Engvall said, Absolutely not. Why not? Julian asked, but Engvall said that they didn't have time for this. Then she told Titi to bring Julian and Diana back home and wait. Just like that, Engvall's team left. Looking at them disappearing into the forest, Titi asked if they were going to be okay.
She asked Julian, "Engvall is going to come home, right?" He couldn't answer her. He looked at Diana's smile, then thought about the smile of Joseph and his family together, and the smile of Titi when Engvall was with her, and the smile of Mira when she got to see Diana for one last time. He thought to himself, "I don't want to see another child lose their parents." Julian then, with his steeled resolve, he gave Diana to Titi, saying he would go with Engvall's team. Titi was worried and tried to call him back, but Julian looked at her with a gentle smile, saying everything is going to be okay. And with that, he headed off, using his power, the power meant for fighting the unknown.
Back in the past, Joseph and his father used to spend time together hunting in the woods. This was how he learned the wisdom of coexisting with the forest. While they were hunting, they found a deer. His father waved at him, gesturing him to the deer, all while keeping silent. He taught Joseph a certain hand signal that indicated he was going to distract the prey and told Joseph to remember it. Later the day, when the hunt had been successful, while they were skinning the deer, Joseph asked if he would ever become as good a huntsman as his father, to which his father told him he didn't have to be. What mattered was that he returned home with his family in one piece. Though it was a hunter's wish to die in the woods, his father thought that dying like that would bring hardship to their family. He has seen many of his friends die in the woods, and he didn't want Joseph to lose him. Joseph heard this. He said that the same went to the father. He did not want his father to die, to which the father told Joseph what a cheeky fella he was. Back to the present, Engvall and Joseph's father were looking for him in the woods, and the father noticed some blood on the ground. Engvall asked what kind of beast it could be, but the father said he had never seen those footprints before and that they should be cautious. They continued exploring. The father was leaping through the forest while providing wisdom about the forest, while Engvall struggled to keep up with him despite him being an old man. They then arrived at a swamp. The father told Engvall to stay close since the swamp there was bottomless. Just then, they heard rustling in from the bush nearby, and from there a large bear emerged. A bear? Engvall was startled, but the father told her to not move. He then pointed his loaded bow toward the bear, letting out immense intimidation, saying, "I don't have time to deal with you. Out of my sight." Crazily enough, the beard growled slightly, then turned around and left them alone. As they could finally relax a little, the father noted how it was a close one since he forgot to bring the bell to keep the bear away. Engvall looked at him. She was rather nervous, but the father assured her, saying, though his mind had been muddled, he never missed a shot. They continued heading deep into the forest. At one point, they reached the part where even the father was unfamiliar with, and he couldn't discern the scent of the beast they were following. Engvall looked around the forest. It was rather ominous. There was no sunlight and wind. The further they went, the more alien it became, and the air was stagnant. Just then, they arrived before a large tree. On the tree were dozens of human bodies hanging on its branches, dead bodies. Some weren't even in one piece. Engvall and the father were horrified. He then noticed Joseph lying under the tree and tried to run at him, but Joseph immediately shouted at them, telling them to stay back, that it was a trap. At that moment, a nightmare fuel of a monster emerged from the tree. The monster is a grotesque fusion of beast and forest, resembling a giant wolf-like abomination fused with twisted tree roots. Its body is covered in tangled, matted fur, while multiple snarling canine heads erupt from its back, each lined with jagged teeth and frozen in a terrifying howl. Supported by long, unnatural limbs and seemingly rooted to the earth itself, it feels less like a living creature and more like an ancient eldritch predator born from the forest's darkest depths. My God, this thing looks terrifying. And what's more, it could talk, as it said, "You fell right into our trap, but we don't need you. You're not the blessed child of the sea. We thought he would come. What a shame. We only need one bait. We'll kill the rest of you." Engvall was terrified. She questioned if it was a nightmare she was dreaming. The father was in even more shock as he recognized the corpses hanging on the beast's body. Those were his old friend, Joseph, Dat, Ruth. "What's this?" the beast asked. "Were these friends of yours? Do you like it? It's our little hobby. Humans are so easily frightened. They're quick to cry and scream for help.
I love listening to those cries before bed. It's the perfect lullaby." The father looked at the corpses. He remembered the time he used to spend with his friends. The beast continued, "Oh yeah, I just remembered something when I hung them up. It was absolutely hilarious. All they kept screaming about was, 'I want to go home. I don't want to die. I have to see my daughter.' They all sobbed and wailed like fools until they died. Ha 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 ha, I just can't get enough of it." The father heard this. He felt something crack inside him as his face darkened. The beast noticed it and asked, "Why the long faces? We're benevolent, you see. We'll hang you up with your friends so you can all be together. There's nothing to fear when you're reunited, right?" The father clenched his fist. "I never thought I could harbor this much hatred at this old age. Eat or be eaten. The relationship between hunter and beast follows the natural order of life. I've accepted this, and I'm prepared for death. But there's nothing natural about Yam, monster. You're nothing but a cold-blooded killer." The beast heard this. It growled, "Indeed we are." Before striking its claws down at them, Angval was the first to react and shielded Joseph and his father. They all got bashed away in the process, flying through multiple trees. Since Angval was the one to shield everything, she was injured the worst. Joseph and his father were also hurt, but their eyes never dulled as they got ready for the battle.
Somewhere else in the forest, Julian was rushing through the woods to find Angval and the other. Knowing running around at random wouldn't help, he used the power to sharpen his senses to feel even the slightest presence of them. Just then, he ran into the same bear from before, but he just charged up and punched it in the face, knocking it out, then kept on running. Back to the battle, Angval was injured heavily and was stunned. The father then took out a pouch in his pocket. Throwing it at the beast, he shot the pouch with an arrow, bursting it. It seemed the pouch contained some sort of powder that stunned the beast. He then turned to Joseph, helping him lift up Angval, and tried to run while they still could. While doing so, Joseph noted that he did not see any eyes on the beast, to which his father speculated that it must have tracked them through sound and scent. Angval asked what was in the pouch, to which the father explained that it was medicinal herbs and aromatic ingredients, which he used to block the beast's sense of smell for a little while, though they ain't got much time left. Hearing this, Angval said, "The smell of my blood." But the father responded, "I know. We'll turn the tables by using your blood as a decoy." After that, he cut out another pouch of herbs and told them to cover themselves with it, so that it masked the smell of their blood. He then gave Angval a cloth and told her to wipe her blood with it. They would use the cloth as the bait. Suddenly, they could hear the sounds of the beast's legs crashing through the forest. Joseph heard it and said, "It's here!" In a corner, the beast charged out at them. "Where are you? You're nearby. The smell of blood. Just ahead. Blood!" They all tried running away. While doing so, the father said, "Turns out these monsters are nothing but animals. Ain't that a relief? If it's an animal, us hunters got a shot." "Hold up. This is bad. It's too fast. It caught up to us." And in no time, the beast caught up and landed another strike at the three of them, sending them flying, crashing through the forest. "Our noses are still messed up," the beast said. "Where did you go? Did we get carried away and kill them? We want to hang them while they're alive." Not far from the beast, Angval's team was lying on the ground. Angval was the one to shield them from the crash again, but this time she couldn't even stand up anymore. The father, coughing out blood, looked up to see his son Joseph, but Joseph's eyes were still sharp and focused. Holding up the bait cloth, he pointed at the beast who was still looking for them. He then made a gesture, the same gesture that his father once taught him. The gesture signaled for a distraction, to which his father immediately understood. Joseph then dashed at the beast, sliding under it. The beast noticed him and tried to strike him, which narrowly only scratched through his shoulder. But Joseph had already wound up. He threw the cloth to one direction, which confused the beast. It followed the smell of blood and reached to the cloth. But it was too late for the beast.
as Joseph said, "You don't get it, do you? We tricked you."
Suddenly, the ground under the beast was no longer solid but liquid-like, and it crashed itself down. It turned out it was the swamp from earlier. They had used the cloth to lure it into the bottomless swamp. The beast panicked, realizing it was sinking. It tried to grab on a tree branch nearby. "It grabbed onto the branch," Engvall shouted. "It's planning to lift its body out." The beast was furious. "That's it. We're not gonna hang you. We'll tear you to shreds and scatter your remains in this swamp." But Joseph quickly called out to his father, "Pops, don't miss your shot." On the other hand, his father had already gotten in the position to shoot his bow. He said, "Who did you think you're talking to?" He then made a shot. The arrow split the beast's limb that was holding onto the branch, and it came crashing down the swamp. Looking at the beast, the father said, "Didn't I tell you? My mind may be muddled, but I never miss my shot." Joseph then ran at them asking if they were okay. The father then apologized to his dead friends for not being able to retrieve their bodies. He then turned around and said that Joseph was pretty tattered himself, but he noticed something wrong. Suddenly, from the swamp, the last canine head of the monster emerged from the swamp. It opened its mouth, and inside it something jumped out. Landing behind them this time, it was a wooden human-like monster with a hand made of wooden blade and branches growing on its face. Everyone was in shock, and in a swift movement, the monster tried to slash them down, but Engvall jumped in to cover for Joseph and his father, taking all the blows. But as a result, the monster grabbed her and pulled her back to it. It then raised its blade, preparing to finish her off, and just when the other two were trying to stop them in a desperate attempt, someone dashed into the scene. It was Julian, as he delivered a blow to the monster, kicking it away. He then landed on the ground. Joseph and his father looked at him in shock. They could sense something different about Julian this time. Engvall also asked, "Julian?" The kid she once took in and protected was now the one to stand between her and the monster. "I'm glad I made it in time," Julian said. "Everyone, get behind me." The monster seemed to recognize Julian for his power. It was furious. "Do you even understand your situation? You're an intruder. Invading the forest is unforgivable. For beings who belong to the sea, I'll kill you, both you and the baby." Julian wasn't fazed. He glared at the monster. "You're the one who doesn't understand. I'll make you eat your words." And with that, they charged at each other. The monster unleashed a flurry of slashes, but Julian dodged everything. He wound up his fist and delivered a powerful punch, sending the monster flying back. The monster went crashing into a tree, snapping the tree down. Engvall looked at him in awe. "What? His speed is unbelievable. Julian, just how strong are you?" But it wasn't that easy, as the monster seamlessly phased into the tree and disappeared. Before Julian could understand what just happened, it emerged from the tree behind him and lunged its sword at him. But just as it began to penetrate Julian's shoulder, he realized it and spinned his body to avoid the blade's momentum. He then turned around and punched it, smashing a hole in the tree. But the monster had already vanished. It immediately sneaked up behind Julian and tried to slice him down, but he realized and narrowly dodged it. He then countered with his kick, snapping its arm. The monster then vanished into the ground again. Engvall saw it and said, "Julian, you're bleeding." "I'm fine," Julian responded. The monster then emerged from the ground in front of him at a distance, staring him down. Looking at the monster's arm, which had already been back to normal, he thought, "It can move freely while hiding underground and inside trees. It can also heal its own wounds. But I'm stronger. I'll smash it to pieces before it can burrow itself again." The monster realized close combat wasn't the answer. It derived a new plan. It held its arm up, and wooden splinters began growing from it. It then shot those thorns at Engvall and the others. Julian realized what was going on as he leaped toward them and blocked that attack head-on, despite those thorns penetrating him. "Julian!"
Angval was worried, but the monster left them no room to breathe as it began shooting the second time, to which Julian had no choice but to try and deflect all of it. Angval shouted at him, "Julian, that's enough! You don't have to protect us!" Julian, with blood and sweat dripping down from his body, he remembered the time when he was still a slave. One day, he got to see his master's usual beating on another slave. It was brutal, the master repeatedly kicking down the slave while insulting him and his dignity. He told the slave to answer him, but as the slave kept getting stomped on, he couldn't answer. He just laid there, eating blows after blows, losing his consciousness. Whether you were rebellious or obedient, it didn't matter. There was nothing you could do to please him. Once the master had left, Julian tried to ask if the other slave was okay, but looking at the slave, blood was spilling out from his head. He foamed from the mouth, and his eyes weren't conscious at all. Julian realized the guy was already dead. Suddenly, his master appeared behind him. He asked, Did you try to help him just now?" He then gave Julian another beating. Laying on the ground, Julian thought, nothing good ever came out of helping others. It was better to not even think about it. I would just get beaten. It brought nothing good. But back to the present, Julian was the one standing, risking his life without a second thought to protect others. He told Angval, "Angval, you saved me and Diana when we washed up on shore. You said adults don't need a reason to care for children. But I realized it doesn't matter whether you're a child or an adult. I've always hated myself for doing nothing and just watching, so I also want to help the people I care for." Thinking about those who had helped him, he realized one thing. Now I believe helping others is what it means to be human. Julian then charged at the monster. The monster noticed and started charging up its thorns attack. Julian thought to himself, "Did you think I was just wasting time? I know there's a limit to the number of thorns you can throw. On top of that, you need to charge up before you can attack." Having said that, Julian kept running at the monster, tanking the attack, and once he had gotten close enough, he grabbed one of its arms, stopping it from burrowing into the ground. The monster tried to stab him in his stomach, but Julian just grinded his teeth and toughed it out. He threw the monster onto the sky. There's nowhere to escape in the sky. Then he jumped up and blasted the monster into pieces. The monster sustained heavy damage, and without means to heal, it lost the battle. Angval and the others looked at Julian in the sky. He had truly won the fight. Landing on the ground, even bloodied and beaten, he protects the ones he loves. A remnant of the monster was still trying to talk. It cursed him. "Curse you! Cursed all of you! May you know nothing but pain and suffering! Die a miserable death!" But Julian just stomped on it. Silence. The monster, in its last desperate attempt, said, "I won't let you leave the forest! Kill! Kill them! Kill!" Julian suddenly felt chill down his spine. He realized what was happening. He asked everyone if they could run, to which they said they could. Julian then told them to leave the forest while he stayed behind and held back the enemy. Angval looked at him. She called out to him, to which he smiled and assured her, "Let's all go home." Angval and the others heard this. They had no choice but to believe in him. And just like that, they began running out of the forest while Julian fought back beasts of the wood, just like the time when he did so with the sea monsters. The pursuit continued. Julian tried his best to hold off the monsters, while Angval and the others ran for their life. Julian then got strapped down by centipede monsters. He grinded his teeth and braced himself, ripping through the restraint of the enemies. Just then, another beast struck him, bashing him away toward Angval and the others. They crashed into each other and fell down to the ground. But this time, the monsters no longer went at them anymore. They just lurked in the darkness of the woods. "Get back here! Kill the sea-blooded! I'll devour you!" Angval asked why they weren't chasing them anymore, to which Julian, recalling his time with the sea monsters, said he knew that those monsters couldn't leave their territory. Just then, he noticed something was coming from the forest, and before his eyes, a human-like, woman-like monster, with its head made of fungus, appeared. Its appearance was strikingly similar in style with the octopus demon who gave Julian his power. And in one gesture, the monster flicked its finger at Julian, and immediately, His whole body was sliced down into pieces. But just as his brain lost its function, he woke up to find himself stumbling on the ground. Though he checked his body and seemed everything was still intact. An illusion! This power is on the same level as that sea monster. The monster did not say anything. It slowly retreated itself back into the forest before Julian's terrified eyes. After that incident, they went home. Marie saw them and immediately ran at them. She hugged Joseph tightly, saying she was so glad that they came back alive. Marie then turned to thank Angval, but before she could do so, Angval stumbled down, falling to the ground.
TT and everyone was worried. Just then, a woman showed up and told them to take Angval inside. Julian asked who she was, to which she answered that she was Ravenna, the doctor of the village, who also dispels curses. Inside the house, Ravenna checked up on Angval and concluded that she was heavily injured. She asked what they fought for that to happen, but Julian and the others hesitated to answer. She then turned to Titi, who was worried about Angval, and gave her some medicines to use for Angval. She also told Julian and the others to get some rest too. That night, while they sat beside Angval, Titi told Julian about her past. A long time ago, there was a conflict with the country at the western border. Many of the residents in the nearby towns perished. My parents were also among those who died. I was very little, and Angval took me in. She raised me like a loving sister would. She recalled when they first met, Angval told Titi, "I'm sorry your parents died, because we soldiers were powerless. It's okay if you hate me, but please let me help you in some way." Thinking about that, Titi never once felt any hatred towards her. Though she had expressed her gratitude to Angval, Angval still blames herself on it till this day. She then turned to Julian and smiled. "Thank you, Julian, for saving Angval." Julian heard this. He felt rather guilty. He explained, "No, don't thank me. It might be my fault that this happened. Judging from that monster's words and actions, it had a grudge against me and Diana." Hearing this, Titi asked, "Why would it target Diana? Is it because she was born at the sea?" To which Julian answered, "I don't know. Joseph, his father, Angval, they all nearly died. Is it my fault? Is it because the monsters were targeting me? If that's the case, don't you think I should leave this village?" Just then, Angval overheard their conversation and tried to sit up. "The monsters can't leave the forest, can they? Angval, you're awake." "Yeah, sorry for making you worry, Titi." She then turned to Julian. "Julian, everything will be fine as long as you don't go near the forest, right?" "Maybe," Julian answered, "but I don't know for sure. I want to avoid any possibility of dragging you guys into this." Hearing this, Angval put her hand onto Julian's face before pinching his cheeks. "Ow, ow," Julian was caught off guard. Angval then told Julian, "You aren't alone in this, so don't say things like that. Don't forget that we're family." Titi smiled and said, "Let's think through problems together, okay?" She then put her arms around Julian and Angval and hugged both of them, though the squeeze was a little too passionate for two people who were injured, as Julian and Angval screamed in pain. Nevertheless, they shared their hug for just a little longer.
The next day, Julian told Angval and Titi how he was thinking about moving, since living close to the forest wasn't safe, and he didn't want to put others in danger. Hearing this, Titi asked where he wanted to move to which he answered that he would like to be next to the sea. Hearing this, Titi said that she had always wanted to live by the sea, which caught Julian off guard, since he thought that only he and Diana would move out. Titi insisted that they would all be moving together, so she turned around to Angval, to which Angval also smiled and agreed. With that settled down, Julian heads off to the village to notify Joseph and the others. Before he left, he told Titi to take care of Angval, and she agreed. She then waved goodbye to Julian and told Angval to do it too, saying, "When you wave to someone, you're wishing them a safe trip. That was why, as a family, Angval should do it too." Angval was embarrassed, but she agreed and bid Julian farewell. "Be safe, Julian." Julian then came to meet Joseph's family. After hearing the news, Joseph asked, "You're moving?" "Yeah," Julian answered. "I want to build a house on the beach, away from the village. I'm planning on visiting the village regularly." Hearing this, Joseph said, "That might be a good idea.
If you catch any seafood, we'll buy it from you." Marie also agreed. "Since the coast is a bit far from here, I'm sure everyone would appreciate it." Joseph's father also said he would introduce Julian to a carpenter to help him building a new house, saying he owed Julian one. After that, Julian went home to find Titi and Angval were up. Their next thing was to decide exactly where they would build their house. But before that, Julian asked if it was okay for Angval to be up, but Titi said that Angval needed to write a report about the forest incident. Angval explained the reason. "It's about the prophecy. There's a high possibility that the monsters will lead to the king's death. I absolutely cannot overlook something like this. This country needs His Majesty." Julian heard this. He asked, "You have so much faith in him. He must be a really good king." To which Angval answered, "His Majesty never turns his back on the oppressed or the vulnerable. He abolished slavery in larger settlements and set all the slaves free. He then granted them status and jobs. Soon, slavery will be banned in the entire country." Hearing this, Julian thought about Mira and the other slaves. He asked, "Does that mean everyone will be able to live normal lives?" "Yeah, the Majesty will see to it." "I see. That's a relief. I was worried about Diana's future in this world." Hearing this, Angval patted Julian's head, reassuring him, while Titi looked at them and smiled. With that, they headed off to the seaside. Walking along the beaches, Julian looked around and said, "Around here is a good place to live, don't you think? We can catch fish here too." He then started putting the net down. Titi looked at him and asked, Julian, have you ever caught fish before?" "No, but like this?" Julian said as he was trying to figure out the method. Titi continued, "It's actually kind of hard to catch fish. I don't think you'll get anything with that net." "Oh, I caught some." "What? Already?" "Well, I don't know if I caught them. It's kind of like the fish went inside the net themselves?" "Yeah, I think so too." Wait a minute, they won't stop coming," Titi said as the fishes kept throwing themselves at Julian. In no time, Julian's net was packed with fishes. Titi looked at it and thought it was a bit freaky. Well, that's what you'd expect from the blessed child of the sea, though he still gets jumped by sea monsters here and there. As they head back, they met with someone. It was the carpenter Joseph's father introduced them to. He asked if Julian wanted to demolish their old house to reuse the wood. But Julian refused, saying he wanted to keep it as a resting spot when they visited the village. Hearing this, the carpenter said they would need more lumber then. Julian offered to be the one to gather all the materials, but the carpenter said that it was too much for one person. Hearing this, Julian just smiled and assured him he could handle it. Julian then headed off to gather materials. He found a spot with trees and thought to himself, "This spot's close to the ocean and there's no sign of any monsters. I wouldn't say this area is a forest either. It's more like a grove." And with that, Julian raised his axe. He activated his powers, saying, "Everyone, lend me your power," and started chopping down woods. In no time, Julian brought back enough wood before the amazed eyes of the carpenter. They then got started to build the house. After a while, Joseph and his father also came to help. Angval also helped, but Titi scoffed at her, saying she was still recovering. More and more people came to help them. They spent their time working, sharing meals with each other. They even made a new grave for Mira. The calm and happy time they got to spend with others, it was more important to Julian than most. Looking at Diana's happy face, it was all he ever wanted. In no time, they had finished building the house. Julian thanked the carpenter for helping him, but he just smiled, saying, "I should be thanking you. That idiot old man is one of the few friends I have. You've helped him out, and I'm grateful for that. If you ever need anything else, be sure to let me know." Just then, Titi called out to Julian, saying the house was amazing. Julian smiled and thought to himself, "It's been 1 year since then. Mira, Diana's gonna turn 1 year old." And with that, the scene transitioned to Rungbacher, the country's capital. Inside the royal palace, there was a man sitting on a throne. It was none other than the supreme lord of the country. And before him, the prophetess came to give him her report. "O supreme lord, I have a credible source of information. It's from Angval, a knight from the southern region. She claims she fought a supernatural being in the forest." Hearing this, the lord answered, "Go and see with your own eyes if this is related to the prophecy." "My lord, as you're well aware, My power is ill-suited for battle, the prophetess reasoned, but the Lord continued, I'll send Arcos as well. Master Arcos? But isn't he the key to defending the western border? As she said so, the scene transitioned to the western border. We could see an army of soldiers marching forward, and before them, 2 people had been waiting for them. It was a young man with long hair and a maid who came with him. It seemed this was the Arcos they talked about. Looks like the enemy finally decided to show up, Arcos said. I already drank half the jug, tisk. There are about 500 enemy soldiers, the maid said after using a binocular to scout the enemy. Hearing this, Arcos said, they're crossing enemy borders with so few men? Do they even want to win? Who knows? Well, even just half should be more than enough. Master Arcos, it seems there was an incident in the southern forest that's related to the prophecy. You've been summoned to that location. The prophecy, huh? Perfect. Sure sounds better than this dump, Arcos said, as markings started crackling from his eyes, while the water from the jug started floating in the air. This man possessed the same kind of power as Julian. The scene transitioned to the past. We saw a man who said, Angeval, your mother was smiling until the very end. It was Angeval's father who was talking to Angeval. Back when she was a kid, she was told her mom was a fearless person who died fighting on the battlefield. The father continued, her last smile is burned into my memory. She knew it would be my final memory of her, so she made sure to smile before she left this world. She always knew how to get to me. If you ever have a family of your own, make sure to smile for them. You'll need to, since you're so unapproachable. Shut up, Angeval scoffed, though recalling it, she thought that even her father only ever smiled at her until the end. Thinking back, she wasn't as good at smiling as her parents. Just then, Titi bashed in, calling her to come with her. As it turned out, Deanna managed to stand up on her own. Everyone was stoked, and Angeval smiled gently. Though Deanna plopped down right after that, Angeval looked at them and thought, but in front of these kids, I can smile. Moving back to the western border, Arcos and his maid were sitting in front of 500 enemy soldiers. One of the soldiers said, what are you doing just sitting there? This place will soon become a battlefield. Go home, I'll let you off this time. You will? Arcos asked. How generous of you. But I'm afraid I won't be letting any of you go, he said as he activated his power. Several water bubbles started floating toward the soldier, and before he could understand what was happening, Arcos spun the bubble in a vortex motion and instantly blew the soldier's upper body off. Ah! What the hell did he do? Something's off. It's the enemy. Kill him! The enemy soldiers panicked, but Arcos wasted no time. He blew several other soldiers off, killing them, flesh and guts falling down like rain. While Arcos was still calm, he didn't even get up from his seat. The remaining soldier decided to charge at him, but Arcos just sighed. He extracted blood from the dead bodies, creating a dark crimson cloud. The cloud started spinning into a vortex, and while the enemies were still confused about what was happening, he shot down bullets of blood from that cloud, killing everyone. While doing so, he asked, anyway, the village mentioned in the report, is it far? About 60 kilometers from here, which is about 37 miles for our Freedom viewers. That's pretty far. Just then, someone stepped next to him. It was an enemy soldier who, despite having lost almost the whole left side of his body, wasn't dead yet. The soldier screamed, I'll kill you, before swinging the sword down at him. But as Arcos stared at him, his body froze. He could no longer move his body. Humans are nothing but water-filled sacks to me. I can manipulate them in whatever way I please. Having said that, Arcos pulled the soldier's blood out from every direction, bursting him like a water balloon. Blood and flesh splashed everywhere, but none of them reached Arcos as they stopped right before him, though he did not do the same for the maid, as blood splashed all over her. Hey, disgusting! You can control it, so don't let it fly all over the place. You got it everywhere. Ha ha, as if I care. Arko said. Looking up, he sighed and thought how bored he was. Back at Angaval's village, the villagers were restless at the appearance of a royal soldiers' platoon, and as they got into the village, Angaval kneeled, saying, "Welcome, Prophetess Elstree. Thank you for coming all this way." After hearing Angval's report, the prophetess Elstree thanked her and explained that while her prophecies always came true, their details were often unclear. Though she could not predict whether the king's death would come from a monster, illness, or assassin, she was certain she could identify the cause once she saw it. To confirm whether the creature in the forest was connected, she insisted on hearing first-hand accounts from all who had witnessed the supernatural event. Hearing this, Angval responded, "Understood. I will gather them now." Back to the western border, after the fight, laying before Arkos's eyes were piles of dead bodies. He used his power to pick a body up, and slowly he extracted water, normal water, from its blood and bodily fluid. He then put the extracted water into the cup near him, saying, "I guess I didn't even need half." He then picked that cup of water up and drank it. Ew, what the fuck? Sorry, I mean, the maid looked at his action. She couldn't help but feel repulsed. Putting the cup down, Arkos looked at the corpses and said, "Well, that was no fun. This won't do. My strength will wither at this rate. Let's head to that village now." "Yes, Master Arkos." Arkos then smiled ominously. "I've been looking for a new toy, one that won't break even if I use all my power." As he said so, the scene panned to Julian, signaling a new hardship for our MC to overcome.
The story went back to Julian's house. We could see they were spending time with each other. TT was playing with Diana. She noted how Diana was already 1 year old. She then asked how old Julian was, but he said he wasn't sure since he didn't really know his birthday. Hearing this, TT smiled and said they should celebrate Julian's birthday together with Diana. Angval also agreed with the idea. She said she had received quite a reward for the report, so she would treat them to a special celebration. Julian smiled, saying this would be his first birthday celebration ever, and he was excited. TT was also hyped as she stood up and told Julian to go catch some fish with her. Before they headed out, Angval told Julian that she would go to meet with the prophetess Elstree, and at noon they would come to ask Julian about the incident. Julian agreed. Julian then headed out to catch fish with TT and Diana. While he was doing so, TT held Diana and showed her the sea. She looked far into the sea and asked Julian, "The sunrise is beautiful, isn't it?" Julian heard this. He looked up to see TT and Diana, who were smiling back at him, with their smiles as bright and dazzling as the sunrise itself. Those were the ones that he loved the most. And getting to see his family all well and happy, he thought to himself, "I feel like I'm dreaming. Every day is peaceful. I live a modest but blessed life along with my family. It's been almost too calm lately." And as the morning breeze flew through him, he smiled, thinking, "I've started thinking that this happiness just might continue forever." Just then, TT noticed some clouds in the distance, saying it might rain that night. Back to the village, Angval and the prophetess Elstree were going over the report. Elstree said, "I will need all witnesses to recall the events in the forest in as much detail as possible, how the entities attacked and what forms they took for starters. After that, I will assess if these beings aim to kill the king, as well as their relevancy to the prophecy. Then we shall conduct another investigation of the woods." With that being said, they began calling in the witnesses one by one. First was Joseph. He talked about how it was a gigantic beast with multiple heads and could understand human speech. Elstree asked if the beast behaved in any specific way, to which Joseph said that as far as he knew, the beast definitely wasn't friendly. After that, a monster in the form of a human appeared. Next was Joseph's father. He described how all the animals and insects in the wood listened to that beast and tried to kill them. It was like the will of the forest itself.
Elstree asked his guess on those monsters' intentions, but he didn't really have a clear idea as to why, though they definitely had some kind of objectives. So far, Elstree didn't see any relation to the king's death. She thought she should go see it with her own eyes. Just then, it was Julian's turn. Angval called for him, and as the sound of Julian's footsteps slowly reached the room, Elstree felt a suffocating atmosphere. She thought to herself, "Something's not right. There's a darkness, a deep, all-consuming darkness." And as the footsteps creeped in, she could feel something terribly wrong. Wait, stop. What is this dreadful aura?
And finally, Julian walked in the room. He was holding Diana with him. But before Elstree's eyes, from her point of view, standing in front of her wasn't Julian, but a dark, ominous figure of him, with octopus tentacles growing from his back. The ground beneath him turned into the ocean, slowly expanding, swallowing the whole room. There was clearly something not right, something dangerous resided inside him. But that wasn't everything, as beside Julian with his octopus demon presence, there seemed to be another demon, a goat-like spirit there next to him. Elstree was horrified. Looking at her expression, Julian was confused about what happened, while Elstree broke into a cold sweat. How could I have misinterpreted the details of the prophecy so greatly? What on earth did I misunderstand? Angval saw her face and asked if Elstree was all right, but Elstree, panting for breath, pointed at Julian and shouted, "It's you, harbinger of the king's downfall, the darkness that will engulf the world in flames. You are the one that will bring night upon the land, the sworn enemy of this country." Huh? Angval was confused. Is Julian? Julian was confused and worried. He asked, "Angval, what's going on?" Looking at him, Angval grit her teeth. She tried to defend Julian against Elstree's verdict. "No, you're wrong. How could you say that? There's no way this boy would ever kill His Majesty. He has no reason to do such a thing. He has nothing to do with the prophecy." But Elstree turned around and said, "What are you talking about? That young boy is just a victim of fate's whims. I'm talking about the baby in his arms," she said as she pointed at Diana. Julian was shocked. "What?" Elstree then continued, "How repulsive. She shall spread death just by existing. She is the possessor of an ancient and destructive soul." "What the hell are you saying?" Julian said. "Mira sacrificed her life to give birth to her. She was born to be loved. Don't even joke about that. I won't forgive you." But Elstree was firm with her words. "What stand do I gain from making jests about this situation? We must kill her while she's still a baby. As she grows, it will become harder and harder to do so." She then raised her hand and shouted, "Angval, as the king's representative, I order you to kill that baby at once." Hearing this, both Julian and Angval were horrified. Julian recalled his thoughts from earlier of how he thought this happiness would last forever as he stood against Angval with a merciless command directed at those innocent eyes. The scene transitioned into the past, and we got to see what kind of king did Angval swear her allegiance to. Back then, in the Western Border headquarters, the supreme god was sitting on a throne with Elstree next to him. She began reading the decision that the Lord had given Angval. "Knight Angval, for your heroic deeds in this battle, you have been appointed to the king's guard." In front of them, there was Angval. She was kneeling down to the Lord. Next to her, a little girl was hiding behind her back, poking her head out to look at the Lord. It was Titi. Angval heard the decision and answered, "It is truly a great honor. However, I am afraid I wish to decline this opportunity." What? Elstree was surprised, while the Lord remained silent. Aang then turned to Titi and continued, "This child's parents were killed in the war. I wish to raise her in their stead. I humbly request time for this purpose." Hearing this, Elstree was mad. What a preposterous reason! But immediately the Lord tapped his hand and Elstree was scared and stayed silent. She knew she overstepped. "Yeah, bitch, keep your mouth down." The Lord walked toward Angval. Standing in front of Angval,
Titi got to take a look at his face, but his face was hidden with a layer of darkness. The Lord then got down to Angval and Titi. He said, "The responsibility of your parents' death lies with me as the king. I deeply apologize." Elstree heard this. She tried to say that a lord shouldn't be saying that, but the Lord told her to stay silent. He told Elstree to make sure to pay sufficient compensation to all subjects harmed by the war, before turning back to Angval and saying, "Angval, in the southern lands there is a peaceful district that is abundant in nature. Give her a new life there. Build a house for this child who has lost her family and home. Provide her a place of solace and refuge." Hearing this, Angval bowed down and expressed gratitude. She thought to herself, "His Majesty is beyond compassionate. I'm willing to lay down my life for the sake of this land ruled over by His Majesty. If a time comes when His Majesty needs me, I vow to rush to any battlefield. I'll slay any enemy, no matter who they may be."
Having said that, Angval could not believe how fate could be so cruel. How when the day actually comes and she has to strike down the enemy, that enemy has to be those she loved the most. In front of her, a scared, confused boy with a baby in his arms. Are they the ones that she was ordered to kill? Elstree continued, "Angval, I stand here as the king's representative. My voice is the king's voice. My orders are the king's orders. Therefore, my will is the king's will." No the fuck not, bitch. She got close to the overwhelmed Angval and continued, "As a knight, it is completely unforgivable to disobey the king." "But this," Angval tried to reason, "this can't be. You must be mistaken." Hearing this, Elstree activated some kind of power that she has, as markings started oozing out from her pupil. She reached her hand to Angval and said, "Just now I foresaw a glimpse of a future. I shall show you this vision of a world engulfed by flames." And immediately a horrifying scene came to Angval's mind. Several people in dark cloaks, standing in front of the capital that was engulfed in flames, while the starry night weaved into the dark hair of a woman in the sky. It seemed they were acting for her will. The king was dead on his throne, houses burning down, children screaming in pain, and standing between those cloaked figures, it was Diana, who was standing on a pile of corpses with the knife of her dear mother Mira in her hand. Immediately, Angval fell out of the vision and back to reality. She collapsed on the ground, gasping for breath. Elstree then got down to her. She asked, "Do you understand now? Our world now stands at a crossroads." Angval stayed silent for a moment. She then stood up and started putting on her helmet. Julian saw this. He asked, "Angval." "Julian, hand over Diana." Hearing Angval's words, Julian's heart was crushed. But despite his pained and desperate expression, power markings began crackling out from his eyes. And immediately he held Diana and charged at the wall, breaking it, and got out of the house. The soldiers and villagers around were surprised and confused. Just then, Elstree also got out. She said, "Don't let that boy get away. Prepare for battle." Hearing this, soldiers started surrounding Julian. Angval also walked out of the house. Julian encircled. He held on tightly to Diana, ready for the struggle, to protect his beloved sibling, who was branded as a demon child. Back home, Titi was preparing meals for the celebration. She looked at the well-prepared feast on the table and smiled. "Whew, that should do it." Just then, Joseph barged in. "Titi, it's Julian and Angval." And that brings us back to the current moment. Julian was standing between Angval and Diana, not letting Angval take Diana away, while Titi and other villagers tried to ask what happened. Elstree looked at Angval and began pressuring her, saying the village would suffer in her stead if she decided to protect Diana, because Elstree knew it would be a greater punishment to Angval if others suffered in her place. The villagers tried to intervene, but Elstree called out a knight named Guillaume. That knight heard it. He slammed his mace onto the ground, drew a line with it, and from there, he declared, "You villagers have done nothing wrong. However, if you cross this line, you will be branded a traitor and purged.
So shut your mouths and stay put." Everyone heard this. They had no choice but to stay silent for the time being. Over there, Julian was receiving blows from Angval. He didn't fight back. He just kept blocking her attacks and begged her to stop. Julian tried to talk it out. "You're manipulating her, isn't she? You wouldn't do this." "What? You're wrong. I'm acting of my own will. In the future, countless innocent people will die, all because of Diana." Hearing this, Julian shouted back, "There's no way that's true. You know that's not true, right? We live together as a family, so you, of all people, should know that." But Angvan just kept attacking Julian, though internally she thought, I know it's not true. I believe in Julian and Diana. The future prophetess Elstree showed me is obviously a lie, but I cannot disobey orders. If I try to disobey now, then those soldiers will probably resort to force. Diana and the villagers will get dragged into this. There will definitely be casualties. Elstree will not hesitate to make sacrifices if it's in the name of the Supreme Lord. That's why I'm begging you, Julian, please just kill me. Then take Diana away and run from this place. If you kill me, I'll be deemed incompetent and the villagers will be spared. Ending me should be easy if you use your power. I'd rather end the situation with my own life than kill you and Diana. Please, Julian." But Julian just wouldn't fight back. He turned his back to let Angval hit him, while shielding for Diana, while still begging for Angval to stop. Just then, Titi shouted, "Angval, stop!" Angval suddenly froze. She lost balance and stumbled down. Julian, on the other hand, was gasping for breath, trying to keep his consciousness. He said, "We're going to leave this country." Holding on to Diana, he slowly turned back, and with his head bowed to the ground, he said, "We won't ever return. We'll never come back. So please, I'm begging you, please don't kill her." Everyone was shocked. They didn't say a single word. Angval thought to herself, "No, you don't understand. No matter what you say, they won't give up." She then grabbed Julian's collar and said, "Didn't I tell you, Julian? You have to fight!" Hearing this, Julian remembered one of his first conversations with Angval. "Tell me, Julian, what kind of family do you want to give Diana? What sort of life do you envision for her?"
Hearing this, Julian said, "I want her to live without any worries. I want to show her a world free from any suffering." "That's quite a task to undertake. You will have to fight with all your strength on her behalf." "What will I have to fight?" "This unforgiving world," she said, as she looked into Julian's eyes. Back to the present, this time, once more, they were face to face, as Angval screamed at Julian, "Fight, Julian, fight!" And immediately, power marks crackled from Julian's eyes. But for a moment, he calmed down, suppressing his power. He looked at Angval with deering eyes. "Why won't you fight?" Angval asked, her voice trembling. Julian continued, "I won't use my power to hurt my family." Hearing this, Angval was losing it. "Please, I can't take this anymore." Just then, Elstree said, "Enough. Angval, draw your sword. End this." Angval stayed silent for a moment. Then she clenched her fist. Drawing out her sword, she put it against Julian's shoulder, her heart torn between love and loyalty. Her blade now turns against the very lives she swore to protect. They stood still for a while. Elstree was restless. She shouted, ordering Angval to kill them right away. Guillaume saw this. He asked her, "Lady Elstree, why put on a spectacle like this? If you leave it to us, we can carry out the deed." "Silence. I want to see where Angval's loyalty lies. Betrayal of the Supreme Lord. It is absolutely unforgivable." Guillaume heard this. He thought how Elstree is a fanatic. Julian, kneeling against Angval's sword, he thought to himself, "What should I do? What's the right move?" He glanced around. Should I have that prophetess as hostage? No, the soldiers and villagers are too close. If it turns into a brawl, there will be casualties. I can't fight holding Diana either. Just when it was getting desperate, over the distance, Marie, Joseph's wife,
looked at Julian. She remembered the time she used to have a conversation with Juliana. Back then, in their house, Julian said he wasn't sure how to raise a child, since he didn't have a normal childhood. He was worried if he could raise Diana properly. Marie heard this. She assured him, "I think it's fine to worry like that as you go along. Just aim to be someone children can proudly look up to. If you can be a sincere person like that, I think that's more than enough." She then pointed to Joseph, who was having fun with their child, and Marie was grateful to Juliana. It was because of him that they could make memories like that. She thanked Julian for saving Joseph, saying she believed Julian would raise Diana well. Back to the present, looking at Julian, she thought about how she said they should be someone that children can proudly look up to. Joseph noticed her wife acting weird, so he asked what's wrong. Marie heard this. She was dazed for a moment, before she steeled her resolve. Looking at Joseph, she smiled. Though she couldn't hide the fear in her eyes, she still smiled. "I'm sorry, Joseph." Hearing this, Joseph immediately understood her intention. He himself couldn't bear to be someone who just stood on the side. And with that, together they stepped foot across the line, walking towards Angval, while Guillaume thought to himself, how foolish. They continued walking in front of everyone. Alas, they stood between Angval and Julian, shielding Julian and Diana.
Marie! Joseph, why are you? Julian risked his life to save my husband. That's all the reason I need. Just then, another person walked past the line. It was Joseph's father. Next was the carpenter, and in no time everyone in the village walked past, despite the soldiers trying to warn them not to. The line that they once thought were absolute was stomped on with various footsteps, blurring it. Julian couldn't believe in his eyes. Every single person in the village was now by his side. "Julian and Diana are part of this village. We won't let you harm them any further." Titi then walked up to Angval. She said, "Angval, this has gone far enough. Don't try to bear it on your own." When Angval heard this, she finally gave up, though she was relieved. On the other hand, Elstree was fuming. All these fools don't understand the gravity of the situation they're in. It seems we must wipe the entire village off the map. Knight Guillaume, slaughter them all. As you wish. Soldiers, draw your weapons. And with that, the battle began. Joseph helped his father to jump up the rooftop while the soldiers began charging at everyone. But immediately, Angval turned around. She swung her massive sword, and in one hit, she bashed dozens of soldiers away. Angval! Elstree was furious. Just then, Guillaume noticed something flying toward Elstree and blocked it. It was Joseph's father. He attempted to shoot her down with an arrow, but it was unsuccessful as the soldiers began covering Elstree. Standing on Julian's side, Angval said, "I'm sorry, Julian." "It's all right, Angval. I know your intentions are honest and true." Angval heard this. She told Julian to take Titi and Diana and run away since he couldn't fight them while protecting Diana. "But what about you and everyone else?" Julian asked, to which Angval answered, "Listen carefully. Their target is Diana. If you take her and run away from here, the soldiers will have no choice but to chase after you. Some soldiers will stay behind to suppress the villagers, while others will pursue you. Their strength will be divided into two. We have a better shot that way. I will protect the villagers. I won't let anyone die." She continued, "That leaves you to defeat the pursuers. Can you do that, Julian?" "I can," Julian answered. They could no longer stay at that village anymore. The four of them had to leave. Angval assured Titi, "Everything will be all right, Titi. I'll catch up to you all soon. Let's meet up at a point beyond the eastern grasslands. I'm sure there's a place where all of us can live peacefully together. For now, just focus on keeping Diana safe." As she said so, she broke open an escape route in the enemy's formation, telling Julian and Titi to run. Suddenly, Guillaume blocked the exit. He wound up his mace, but just as he was about to attack, Joseph's father shot him in his arm, stunning him. Guillaume was surprised at his precision. Julian thanked Joseph's father and began dashing away with Titi. Elstree saw this and immediately ordered them to chase Julian. Julian, on the other hand, was trying to divert as many of the soldiers as he could.
while Angval and the villagers tried to fight the remaining force. Though the villagers didn't stand a chance against the soldiers, as one of them was about to get killed, but Angval stepped in time, and with one swing she bashed those soldiers away. The soldiers noticed her overwhelming strength and began to gang up on her. While doing so, Guillaume stood next to Elstree. He said, "Angval once served in the Western military campaign and was called the Unrivaled Cloaked Knight. She's a heroic warrior. It won't be easy to take her down. It will eat up a lot of our time without a doubt." "No," Elstree said. "Soon the tide of the battle will turn in our favor, so the future has been foretold." After a while, both the villagers and the soldiers sustained noticeable damage. Angval continued to clash swords with the remaining soldiers. Looking at her, Guillaume thought to himself, "She's stronger than I expected, or rather, she's tough and unyielding. She's probably a gentle person who's not suited for conflict to begin with. That's precisely why she becomes so strong when she needs to protect her allies." Still, after enough time, Angval appeared noticeably exhausted, and this time it's Guillaume's turn to take her on. Walking up to her, Guillaume thought to himself, "You'll strike with the blunt edge of your sword until the bitter end, huh? You deflected every attack without killing a single one of our soldiers." Getting into his fighting stance, Guillaume said, "I lost many of my friends in the Western War, but I also have many friends who say they were saved by you. It's unfortunate we have to meet this way. Angval, you who brandishes a magnificent and mighty sword, I respect your virtue and noble deeds. I am Ironclad Guillaume, Commander Knight of a regiment bearing my name. I challenge you to a duel." And with that, staying true to the knightly code, they faced each other head-on.
These two great heroes would have stood side by side had fortune favored them, but now, to protect those they loved, to honor their sworn loyalty, they stood against each other, trading blows with their lives on the line. In a swift movement, Guillaume broke Angval's sword. He winded up for a second strike, hitting her in her liver. Angval managed to stab Guillaume in his elbow in return, but the damage she sustained was too severe as she vomited blood spilling out from her helmet. With that, Angval stumbled down, lying on the ground, while Guillaume said, "This weapon crushed organs as well as armor. You're one step away from a fatal wound. Stay put and don't move. I won't take your life." And while Angval was still on the ground, one soldier looked at them and thought, "No, Commander Guillaume, you're underestimating her. You have no idea what kind of person Angval is. Back when I was a soldier in Angval's regiment, I saw hell. The stink of corpses permeated the town. That battle would later be known as the Western War. It was endless fighting, with no replenishment or reinforcements. We were all gravely wounded. Back in the war, Angval's squad once found someone trapped inside a house. It was a little girl. More specifically, it was Titi back then. She was still alive, but not far from her, her parents' corpses were lying nearby. It seemed they tried to escape, even if it meant abandoning their child, and they were killed before they could do so. Angval looked at them and said, "We have no right to judge them. War and death robbed them of their humanity. It's devastating. We cannot let humanity's love and kindness succumb to evil and terrors such as these. I'll never allow it." Just then, another soldier reported saying the squad had been ordered to retreat and that they should get moving, but Angval wanted to search for the remaining civilians. Hearing this, the soldier hit her with a cold truth. "Commander, this child is the only survivor left." Still, Angval was stubborn. She told them they should go first, and she would stay and look for more. It was a short interaction, but it left an unforgettable impression for the soldier. This person doesn't bend. She won't give in, no matter what. Just like that, Angval stood up. Guillaume was surprised, but Angval said she had been dealt heavier blows than this, recalling the monsters in the wood. Having no choice, Guillaume decided to take Angval's life, and Angval was ready. Guillaume thought to himself, "What will you do with a broken sword? The outcome of the fight is set, and there's no changing it now. Dashing towards her, Guillaume thought to himself, I'll make sure to crush your skull. It'll be painless, over in a single blow. But as he swung his club at her, Angval pulled her fist back and punched straight at the club, blocking it with her fist. The impact shattered her hand, but it was enough to barely deflect the strike. Guillaume overcommitted. He tried to pull his weapon back, but the injury in his elbow made his movement just a split second slower. Still, it was enough for Angval. As she grabbed his cloak, and before Guillaume could react, she hit him with a devastating headbutt, blasting him back. The collision was so strong, Guillaume was knocked down unconscious. The soldier saw them. He thought to himself, I knew it. She is glorious. Just like that, the commander lost. Before him stood the embodiment of indomitable.
After taking down the commander, Angval pointed her broken sword towards Elstree. Withdraw your troops immediately. But something wasn't right. Despite being cornered, Elstree wasn't scared or panicked at all. She let out a smug laugh, saying, This is the very future I witnessed. He arrived just in time. What? Angval was confused. Just then, he noticed someone was coming. 2 people flying on a bubble of water towards them. It was none other than Arcos and his maid. They had come to join the battle. Landing on the ground, Arcos activated his power, and before Angval could even ask who he was, he shot her with a devastating water blade, sending her flying back. Angval! The villagers tried to call out for her, but she had already lost consciousness. Walking towards the villagers, Arcos asked, So, what is going on here? He then used his power, and suddenly the villagers' bodies started floating up. What? What's happening? Arcos let out a manic grin as he floated all the villagers onto the air. Everyone, even elderly people and babies. He asked, Do you need me to kill them? Master Arcos, Elstree said. Ignore those people, they aren't important. A boy holding a baby ran off just moments ago. That baby is the child of the prophecy. Hearing this, Arcos was disappointed. A kid and a baby? Seriously? What a letdown. I came all the way here for this? But Elstree answered, The boy has supernatural powers like you, Master Arcos. Hearing this, Arcos's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but let out an ominous smile. Oh. The maid saw this and said, Ugh, what an unsightly grin. Quiet, you wait here, Arcos said. Dropping down the villagers, Arcos went to find Julian. Over at Julian's place, they were running from the soldiers, but TT was exhausted and couldn't run anymore. Julian heard this. He told TT to hold on to Deanna tightly, and in an instant he used his power to throw TT and Deanna straight into the air. While they were on the air, Julian began beating down all the enemy soldiers. TT, on the other hand, was beyond terrified. Hey, how am I supposed to land? But as she fell down to the ground, Julian caught her. He had already cleared out the enemy squad. Julian then said, There are still a lot more soldiers on the way. We're gonna run away now. But TT didn't care about that. Instead, she scoffed, Next time, give me a heads up before you toss me like that. Back in the village, though everyone was fine, Marie noticed Angval had already left to stop Arcos, despite her grave injuries. Guillaume also noticed this and laughed slightly, impressed by her unyielding will. On the other hand, Arcos was finding Julian, and as he encountered more and more soldier bodies, he knew he was getting closer. Just then, from the cliff above, Angval caught up with him, landing before Arcos with her broken hand strapped tightly to the club she took from Guillaume with bandages. She said, while gasping for breath, I won't let you pass beyond this point. Oh, really? Arcos mused. And so began the battle between the indomitable knight and the divine nobleman. Standing against each other, Angval said, I respectfully ask that you step aside, Master Arcos. I have no desire to fight the esteemed son of the Supreme Lord. But hearing that, Arcos didn't seem to care. He asked, Who cares? He's just up ahead, isn't he? The kid worth my time. When Angval heard this, she thought,
Master Arcos is a transcendent being. He's on a level far beyond ordinary people. He inherited godly powers from the Supreme Lord. However, I see you haven't inherited His Majesty's character. Ha! My father? He's a lost cause. I heard he used to take whatever he wanted by force, but now he's nothing but a feeble-minded old man. He's gone soft. He's unworthy to be the king. Immediately as he said that, Angval charged at him and delivered a powerful blow, but it was blocked by water cast by Arcos. Still, grinding on the club, she said she wouldn't let anyone, not even Arcos, disrespect the Supreme Lord. Hearing this, Arcos laughed. Ha ha, are you an idiot? You're rebelling against the Supreme Lord right now. You're just full of contradictions, aren't you? Don't you know that baby you're so desperate to protect is the one prophesied to one day kill that king you serve? You say you revere the king, but your actions will lead to his death. You're half-assing everything. How can you win this battle when you can't even make up your mind? Go on, tell me. Do you really think battlefields are that forgiving, little hero of the West? Hearing this, Angvala recalled nights when the nightmares kept her awake. Looking at Titi sleeping by her side, she fixed her blanket before going out for a breather. Sitting at the beach, she recalled, "That war left me endless grief for my lost comrades, regret for the countless I couldn't save, and inescapable guilt that I was the sole survivor." Thinking about the night she spent talking to Julian at that time, when she got to know Julian's guilty feeling that Mira had to die for his stead, she thought they were the same, her and Julian. Just then, Julian, holding Diana, walked up to her. "Julian, you were awake?" "Yeah," Diana was fussing. And from the house, Titi also called out, "Hey, Angval isn't in bed." Looks like everyone's up." "You can't sleep, Angval?" "Yeah, it's that kind of night." "Oh well, I guess we have no choice but to keep you company tonight," Titi said.
Hearing this, Angval was beyond grateful. How lucky I was to not be alone with my pain on such a night. Many times I thought to myself that I wanted to save those children, but the one being saved was me. Back to the present, Angval finally steeled her resolve. "O Supreme Lord, I'm afraid I've found something I cherish more than this country. I must point my blade at you in order to protect them. Please forgive me." Or so she thought, but her boundless will and resolve was nothing more than a plaything to Arcos, as just a moment later we saw her lying on the ground in a splash of blood, while Arcos smiled. I love using my power to mangle the human body, especially killing people by turning them into mush, that glossy muck, dark and grimy, yet vivid. They take on so many shapes and colors. Nothing is as intoxicating as destroying the human form. This feeling of absolute power is exhilarating. All the corpses hail me as the greatest of them all. But I've grown tired of dealing with normal humans. It's no different than a child playing with dolls. When you grow up, it's only natural to want more of a thrill, right? How should I kill the kid with powers like mine? Angval, with her body covered in injuries, tried to stand. Using the club to keep her standing, she thought, "This guy's pure evil. He thinks nothing of crushing others to fulfill his own desires. I can't let him catch up to Julian and the others. I've made my choice. I'm going to protect those children." Stronger than any armor, her single-minded resolve saw her through.
Not far from there, on the battlefield, with multiple soldiers' bodies lying on the ground, there was Julian as he charged in, taking on dozens of soldiers by himself. He asked, "What's wrong with you all? You're all ganging up on us to kill a single baby. Do you really see nothing wrong with that?" But despite this, the soldiers said, "We don't want to do this either, but Lady Elstrie's prophecies always come to pass. That baby is the child of the prophecy. She will one day burn this country to the ground. For many of us, this country is our home. We fight for the sake of our families. It's only natural you do the same for yours. There's no turning back for either of us." The situation seemed to get more and more desperate. On the other side, Engvall was continuously sustaining damage. Arcos told her to focus up. After all, he was still holding back. Engvall tried to attack, but none of the attacks even got through Arcos's water defense. Engvall thought to herself, "This is just a game to him. That works in my favor. There's such a huge gap in power that his guard is down. That's my only shot at winning." Just then, from behind her, a water spear shot out from the ground behind, piercing her abdomen from the back. She was startled and turned around, but the spear had already dissolved. Instead, another water spear emerged from a tree in front of her, impaling her shoulder. Engvall fell to the ground while Arcos smiled and said, "Both the ground and trees hold water. Water exists everywhere. There's no escape." But Engvall didn't respond. Arcos thought he killed her. He crouched down to check if she was dead. Just then, Engvall's eyes lit up and she struck a heavy blow. But even that wouldn't work, as Arcos blocked the attack. "Looks like you're still with us." Bashing the club out of her hand, he said, "Huh, so desperate, feigning death." But Engvall didn't give up. She pulled out her broken sword and attacked him still. It was blocked. The injuries are getting worse and worse. Even Arcos noticed this and thought the playtime was over. But for that split-second opening, Engvall turned the sword at him. She thought, "I'm not done yet. I'll kill him right here and now." She then stabbed him in the throat, and it connected. The sword sunk deep into Arcos's neck, but something wasn't right. Turned out, it wasn't Arcos's skin that was penetrated, but the sword itself shattered as it hit his neck. It didn't pierce. Engvall was confused, but Arcos immediately hit her with a water bullet, sending her tumbling down the slope. Arcos continued, "I call it blood armor. I harden the blood beneath my skin and envelop my entire body in a protective shield. But I've got to say, I underestimate you. Freakishly tough, aren't you?" Engvall was lying on the ground. All of her stamina seemed to have gone out as she gasped for breath, while Arcos slowly walked up to her. Just then, she noticed something. From the hill not far away, there were people. It was Julian, Titi, and Diana. Engvall. Titi noticed her, and Arcos also noticed them. He smiled. "Well, well, look who's here." And with that, their fate finally crossed.
The stage is now set for their destiny to unfold. Looking at Engvall's tattered injuries, Julian told Titi to take care of Diana while he rushed down to them. Arcos saw Julian rushing down. He asked Engvall, "That kid's part of your family, right? He'll come at me for real if I kill you, won't he?" As he said that, he began channeling his water power. Engvall was dazed. In front of her, the face of Julian, of Titi, and Diana, they all cared for her. She thought to herself, "Words can't describe the happiness I've felt this past year." We'd wake up in the morning, then gather around the dining table. After that, we'd walk to the village together, and when we'd return in the evening, we'd welcome each other home. We'd end the day by walking along the shore, then we'd go to sleep. That simple and peaceful life was more than enough. To Engvall, that was all she ever wanted, and she was grateful. Grateful to be blessed with such a loving new family. And she couldn't help but continue, "The four of us should travel the world together. Let's find a place no one knows and live a quiet life there. We'll build another house on the shore. The four of us, together." As she said that, she tried to wipe her tears. Julian was trying his best to reach her, but Engvall was exhausted. She couldn't move anymore. And Arcos was more than ready to deliver the final blow. While Titi, holding on to Diana, she couldn't do anything but witness the inevitable fate that was about to dawn on them. Still, Engvall was calm. She said to Titi, "There are still many more happy days ahead, I'm sure of it. Even if I'm gone, everything will be okay if the three of you are together." And as she recalled Titi's words, "When you wave to someone, you're wishing them a safe trip. We're family, so you should wave too." Those words and Titi's gentle smile were burned into Engvall's memory. And with that, Engvall smiled. She raised her hand and waved goodbye to Titi, to Julian, and Diana. Her smile was gentle, yet she couldn't truly hide her welling tears.
Still, it was time to say goodbye. And with that, Arcos shot a water bolt in her back, drilling an open hole in her body, and she dropped to the ground before the terrified eyes of Julian. Julian, witnessing his family getting murdered, couldn't believe in his eyes, and a surge of heavy emotion flooded his mind. Arcos, on the other hand, smiled and screamed at Julian. "Come on, come at me with all you've got." And well, Julian did just that. Dark smoke began flushing out of his body, covering his body, barely able to hide his rage, his fury that fueled his power. And as the black smoke of his fury rised, so began the final battle between two blessed children, one with black smoke and the power of 100 lives, the other with the unmatched control over water. "Come on," Arcos said. "Come at me with all you've got." Immediately, Julian tried to blitz him. He threw out a punch, which was blocked by Arcos's water shield. But to his surprise, the shield couldn't handle Julian's strength, and it broke. Julian's fist drilled through the shield, hitting Arcos directly in his body. Arcos sustained damage. He was flung away, but he quickly managed to pull himself back using his water, barely getting up. He thought to himself, "He broke through both my water shield and blood armor and wounded me." Arcos then laughed. He was excited. Using his power to stop the bleeding, he said, "Now we're talking. You are marvelous." Arcos then thought to himself, "I have complete control over my blood. There's no need to worry about bleeding. Even my ruptured organs are already healed, because I covered them with a membrane of blood. Now it's my turn." "Well, how do you like this?" Arcos said as he summoned a rain of piercing water spears. But Julian did not care. He charged at Arcos, tanking the spears straight on. This startled even Arcos. "Ha! What just is he made of? This kid's so tough, he's not even trying to dodge." But Arcos was prepared for that. He compressed a water ball in his palm and shot out a high-pressure water blade, slicing Julian's arm off. If regular water bolts aren't lethal, he would just crank up the density and power. "Ha!" Arcos smirked. "Are you stupid? You attacked me without thinking." But immediately, Julian grabbed his severed arm and smacked the shit out of Arcos. This guy just doesn't give a fuck, bro. Arcos got flung around the forest, crashing into multiple trees. Julian walked slowly towards him. He looked at his mangled arm indifferently before tossing it away like nothing. Arcos was hurt, but he still smiled. "Ha! Good. Show me more. Nothing beats unleashing your full potential. You get it, right?" Julian didn't respond. He just glared at Arcos before they kept going at each other. Meanwhile, Titi got to look at Angval's body. She was trembling, covered in cold sweat, while trying to grasp her breath. On the other hand, Julian continued charging at Arcos. He used the remaining arm to punch Arcos, but Arcos already anticipated it. He shot out another water blade, slicing Julian's other fist off. "Ha ha ha! Another arm gone," Arcos laughed. But Julian just did not care. He committed with his punch anyway, and slammed his arm into Arcos's face, sending him flying. Rolling around the ground, Arcos was furious. "Ugh, you crazy wretch!" But his fury was nothing compared to Julian's rage, as nothing compares to the pain of losing Angval. They continued their fight. Looking at Julian, Arcos thought to himself, "Even after all that, he doesn't so much as flinch. There's no fear at all. You've got some nerve underestimating me. Do you seriously think you and I are equals in this fight? Not a chance." Julian didn't respond. He walked Arcos down and threw a punch at him, but suddenly his body froze. Julian was confused, and Arcos began to explain. "What did I tell you? You can't move your body. You see, humans are made up of water. Any liquid in my line of sight is under my control," Arcos said as he formed jagged spikes of hardened water around his arms and punched Julian in the face with it. The spikes ripped open Julian's face. Blood splattered everywhere. Arcos then continued, If I wanted to, I could have killed you the moment I saw you. I'm on a whole different level. Arcos then continued beating Julian down, peeling his flesh off with his water claw. You're weak. Cower and beg for your life. Weaklings like you all live only to entertain me. Just then their eyes met each other, and on Julian's face, even with his nose and mouth completely scraped off, revealing his flesh and teeth, he looked at Arcos with an unyielding rage. Arcos was ticked off. He asked, "How can you still look at me like that? Have you lost it?" Forget it. How disappointing. He turned around from Julian's grotesque face and said, "Drop dead." And suddenly Julian's head exploded, blood spilling out from his head, falling down the forest like rain, while Arcos used his power to stop the blood from hitting him. This guy thinks he's Gojo. Julian's body dropped to the ground, while Arcos went to kill Diana off before he left. He admitted that the fight was slightly entertaining. The scene transitioned to a beach. On the shore, there was a campfire pit, and sitting beside it, there was Julian and the old slave from back on the ship. They were in Julian's consciousness. "Are you tired, lad?" the old man asked. Julian recognized him. The old man asked if Julian was going to give up, and Julian hesitated. The old man continued, "It's okay to sit down and rest, but sooner or later you have to stand back up and start walking again. It might be harsh, but ye can't afford to lose. Don't accept no injustice. You have to keep fighting back." He then apologized for making Julian carry their burden, but Julian assured him it was he who chose that path. Their conversation came to an end, and the old slave began walking down into the ocean. He said, "I'm the first of 100. It's the way of the world for the old folks to part first." "What are you doing?" "Don't worry, only my life will return to the sea. My power will stay with ye." "Wait, before you go, tell me your name." My name's Hillards. Don't you forget it. Be victorious, Julian." Back in reality, Arcos was walking, but suddenly he noticed something. It was Julian's biggest trump card, the lives of 100 people. And Arcos looked down to find a hand drilled through his stomach. He was startled. It was Julian, who had just been resurrected, more powerful than ever. All of his scars that he received after he got his powers also healed completely. "You piece of filth." Arcos was furious. He shot a water bullet at Julian, but Julian quickly dodged, and in a swift movement, he struck. And Arcos's head was severed, rolling down the ground. His body swayed, then dropped to the ground also. At the cost of one of 100 invaluable souls, Julian emerged victorious. Putting away blood from his hand, Julian decided to return to Diana and Titi. But for a moment, Angeval's face flashed in his memory, and he grinded his teeth. Angeval was no longer with them. Suddenly, a water spear shot at Julian. He narrowly managed to dodge it, only getting his in his palm. Julian was confused. Before his eyes, someone walked up to him. It was Arcos, or rather, Arcos's body, without the head. He was still managing to move. Julian then noticed the blood spilling from Arcos' head. That blood flow wasn't natural. It was being controlled. "Now you've done it, you bastard," a voice came up. It was Arcos. His head was following his body, connected by a stream of blood. "I'll make you wish you were dead," Arcos said. Putting his head back on his neck, he thought to himself, "I stopped the bleeding and sealed all injuries. By forcing my heart to beat, I can circulate blood to my brain. But I can't repair my severed cervical spine or nerves with blood. If I think of my body as a singular sack of fluid, I can control it and move it at will. So long as I maintain this power, I won't die." "Should have crushed my head, kid," he said. Julian immediately activated his power, though both of them shared a similar thought. That said, how on earth is he still alive? Arcos began to speculate. "I know I killed him, but he somehow resurrected. Is he immortal? Even his wounds from earlier healed. If he regenerates each time he dies, it's too risky to kill him. I'll sever all his limbs and render him powerless. Then I'll use my abilities to stop the bleeding. He'll live, but as a harmless caterpillar. I hate to admit it, but this kid's dangerous. I'll use all I've got, even my trump card," he said as he glanced into the distance. No more playing around. But just as Arcos activated his power, Julian quickly created a smokescreen with his power, recalling Arcos's words, saying he can control liquid in his line of sight. Blocking his view was the suitable choice. Arcos clicked his tongue. He thought, smoke screens are simple but troublesome. Now what should I do? But just then he noticed something. Water was falling down from the sky. It was raining. Standing under the rain, Arcos couldn't help but laugh loudly. Ha ha, you see? Even the heavens are on my side. And now, with unlimited ammunition, Arcos began firing non-stop barrages of water bullets mowing down the forest. Julian tried to escape, but the shots were so much, it was clearing out the smoke. Arcos followed him. He shouted, "Where do you think you're going?" The water barrages shot at Julian, directed him against a cliff. He had no choice but to jump off that cliff. But this soon to be exactly what Arcos planned, as he said, "Ha, I've got you now, fool." Under the ocean, it was the sea. Arcos followed Julian down, saying, "The sea is my turf. No one can beat me in my domain." But Julian didn't panic. He calmly looked Arcos dead in the eyes with a somber gaze, and Arcos was pissed. "Why are you looking at me like that? How dare you pity me?" Their final showdown began under the ocean. Who would the ocean favor?
Over at the village, Elstree noticed something was wrong. She began to see a future that shouldn't be, and she demanded the villagers to bring her to the eastern coast, where Julian and Arcos were, using Julian and the other as an excuse to make the villagers take her there. Back to the battle, Arcos was confident. He thought to himself, "I control all bodies of water within my sight. I command all the seas, to the horizon and beyond. The entire ocean bends to my will. This is my secret weapon and my ultimate trump card. You're at my mercy now. You must realize that you're doomed. So how are you so composed?" Both of them sank down the ocean, and the final battle began. Arcos extracted the oxygen from the seawater to create a thin layer of air around his body. He then flicked his hand, and suddenly a massive vortex of water appeared, hitting Julian. Arcos said, "These currents are strong enough to raise the terrain. I'll be taking your arms and legs." He then directed the tornadoes, mowing down the ocean platform. Standing in front of the ruins caused by his power, Arcos smiled confidently. Just then, Julian wiped away the dust and debris. He said, "You thought you were luring me into your trap, didn't you?" Arcos was surprised at the sight of Julian, who didn't receive a single scratch from that attack. Julian continued, "I already know you control water. Did you really think I wouldn't consider the sea? You even looked towards the ocean in the middle of our fight. It was obvious." Arcos broke into a cold sweat. He was confused. What? He's unscathed? No, wait. How is he speaking underwater? Why hasn't he drowned? He doesn't even seem to be breathing. Julian, on the other hand, noted how he had gotten a better grasp on his power. Then he looked at Arcos with a sharp, cold gaze, then immediately blitzed Arcos, delivering a powerful punch. Arcos, though he managed to block it in time, he still sustained damage. The power of Julian's punches were now much stronger than they were on the ground. Even the impact was stronger. Julian wasn't just stronger, he was faster. While Arcos was still recovering from the impact, Julian had already catched up to him. He gave Arcos another bone-shattering punch. Arcos barely managed to keep his consciousness. He fired back a water vortex at Julian. "Take this!" But Julian didn't even try to dodge, as the vortex, upon getting close to Julian, immediately dissolved. It wasn't even touching him. Arcos was horrified. Then Julian said, "I'm not happy about it, but it seems you and I have the same ace up our sleeves." Arcos, on the other hand, realized he had made a grave mistake. Something strange was happening there. He tried to leave the ocean and return to land, but suddenly both of them were met with the presence of something else. "It has been some time," a voice spoke up. "We meet again, my son." It was none other than the octopus demon, and with that, Julian reunited with the mother who blessed him with salvation. The scene transitions back to Arcos' childhood. As a child, he loved to put on plays for his mother. The actors were all captured enemy soldiers. As he asked a soldier where his leader was, the soldier begged him to stop desecrating the bodies of his comrades. But Arcos just didn't care. He covered the soldier in water, drowning him, then releasing the water before the soldier died, keeping him alive. Arcos then turned to his mother. "Aha, look, mother, isn't he funny?" To which his mother said, My, you sure do like that suffocation game." The maid saw this. She asked if the queen wasn't going to stop what Arcos was doing, but the queen just didn't see any problem with him. She then called Arcos over and said, "Listen well, you can do whatever you want. Nothing is beyond your grasp, because you are the child of God. You are the Supreme Lord's precious son." Her words were what built the personality that Arcos has today. But now, going against the true blessed child of the sea, for the first time, Arcos faces a being beyond his control. Arcos was terrified. Meanwhile, Julian asked what the creature was doing there, but the creature responded with rather repulsive words. "Is it so strange to think I would come to meet my beloved son?" Julian was disgusted. He said, "I'm no son of yours." Hearing this, the creature said, "How could you speak such cold words? Ah, perhaps this form is the problem." Saying that, it began morphing its head, turning into something that it is not. "Is this more to your liking?" it said. And before Julian's eyes, the creature's face turned into one of a familiar person. It was using Mira's face. Julian looked at that face. He was enraged at how the gentle smile of his loved one was dirtied and disrespected by the creature's act. He clenched his fist. "Don't you dare mess with me." The creature was rather calm. It said, "It seems I hit the mark." On the other hand, Arcos was confused at this interaction. What in the world is that thing? Just who are these people? What's going on? No, none of that matters right now. I need to get back to land. But before he could leave, the creature directed his gaze at him. "You, boy, how long do you plan on polluting me and my waters with your presence?" Suddenly, the air bubble that Arcos used to cover himself dissolved, and he panicked. "Cuff, I've lost control over the water? How?" Julian saw this and said, "Hey, he's mine. Don't touch him." Arcos panicked. I can't breathe. I've got to reach the surface. I need air." Just then, Arcos's body was jerked back. Julian had grabbed his leg and was pulling him down, while his expression was indifferent. "Damn brat," Arcos scoffed. "Let go, you little... Get off me." But Julian tightened his grip, which scared Arcos. He can't be... Is he dragging me to the depths? Don't make me laugh. Who does he think I am? We're in the water. There's no way. This'll be my end. Drowning of all things. What a joke. You filth. Let go. Let go. Water began flooding Arcos's lungs, his eyes red from the seawater and his head getting cloudy. He thought, I always get my way. You're telling me this worthless piece of trash? Will I get the best of me? It hurts. Air. Please, just let me breathe. Help. And as he was about to take his last breath, he looked down to see Julian, his face darkened by the darkness of the ocean depths, yet his eyes locked onto him, his gaze sharp, devoid of any empathy he had towards Arcos. Julian asked, "So, are you still having fun?" And with that, Arcos's body relaxed. The stitched blood on his neck started dissolving, signaling a loss of control over his power. Arcos was now dead. As man sows, so shall he reap. On the shore, Elstree and Arcos's maid was being escorted by the villagers to the beach. Just then, someone walked onto land. It was Julian, his hand holding Arcos's head. Elstree was in disbelief. "Inconceivable!" Throwing Arcos's head at them, Julian said, "I have a message for your king. We'll be leaving this village. Give up on Diana. Don't you dare hurt the villagers either. If not, you'll meet the same fate," he said as he pointed at Arcos's head, while the maid was trembling, trying to pick his head up. Julian then walked away, but suddenly he stopped. Turning to Elstree, he said, "No, the messenger doesn't have to be you." Elstree was horrified.
As Julian slowly walked to her, he grabbed her neck. "We're better off with you dead. You can see the future, right? Why don't you take a look at what's in yours?" Just then, Joseph's father stepped in. "Julian!" "Gramps, don't get in my way." The father shook his head. He said, "If you keep going like this, you'll get used to taking lives. There's nothing but regret down that path, lad." "It's too late for me," Julian said as he tightened his grip on Elstrie's throat. Elstrie panicked. She tried to talk her way out. "Wait! The crime of killing Master Arcos is yours alone. If I were to die as well, the villagers who allowed it to happen would be found guilty as well. I should use my authority to issue a written oath. This village will come to no harm. Such an oath would be enforceable even against the state." Hearing this, Julian hesitated, but he let Elstrie go. Just then, the village's doctor ran to him asking where Engval was. Julian scrunched his face. He couldn't make words into an answer. Everyone was confused, but as they looked at Julian's trembling, it dawned on them. Marie then said while her tears welled up, "Julian, you know, some of us got hurt badly in the fight, but no one, not a single person, was killed. Engval protected all of us. She saved us." Then, as the sun rose, Julian got back to Titi and Diana. Titi, holding on to Engval's body, she trembled. "Julian, Engval, she won't open her eyes. She must be tired, huh? Right, hey, wake up! Engval, hey, wake up!" Titi was slowly losing herself. She kept calling out to Engval, but just then, Diana heard her. She tried to imitate her words and called Engval's name. Hearing this, Titi finally understood the reality. Engval was no longer with them. She hugged Engval tightly, crying. Julian couldn't do anything else. He got down to them too. They hugged each other tightly, something they had done many times before. But this time, their hugs were filled with sadness and despair. Still, the morning sun soaked them. The rainbow still shined after the rain, and they too would need to keep going.
Later that day, Julian and the others were digging a grave, preparing the funeral for Engval, while Titi and Marie looked after the babies. Still, they could hardly form a smile. Everyone came to pay respect to Engval. Bearing their precious memories, they gather around their kind and dependable guardian. Titi sat in the corner. Her eyes were swollen from crying. On the other hand, Joseph told Julian that the village is a custom of choosing one of their possessions to bury along with the person. He said Julian should do the same, but Julian said he didn't have any possession. Hearing this, Marie assured him, "Anything will do. It's the spirit of remembrance that counts. You could even pick some flowers for her if you'd like." Julian then walked up to Titi. Since she looked tired, he asked to take her inside to rest. Titi mindlessly followed Julian. When they got inside the house, she noticed something. That's right. Looking at the well-prepared feast, she said, "I made food to celebrate your birthday, yours and Diana's." Thinking of how they could have gathered around the meals that night, only for the food to be left untouched, Titi said, "I made enough for all four of us." Julian didn't say anything, and both of them stayed silent. Just like that, the sun set. That night, they prepared the funeral, and people gathered around Engval, praying for her. After a while, Joseph said it was time to bury her. Hearing this, Titi's eyes welled in tears again. She hugged Engval's coffin and said, "No, wait, don't bury her. Please, just wait a little longer, just a little while." Just then, she noticed a lock of Engval's hair had slipped out of the bandages. She asked for a knife, then cut a little bit of that hair, making it her keepsake. Joseph's father then gave her a pouch so she could use it to keep the hair. And with that, Engval was buried. Looking at Engval, Julian stayed silent. Later that night, on the beach, Julian found a boulder. He began smashing it repeatedly with his fist, while thinking to himself, "I could have saved her. I should have more than enough power to save Engval, but
As he did so, he remembered Mira's words. From here on out, I want you to know this. Even in a world like this, love and kindness do exist. So I beg you, don't give up on your fellow man. Thinking about it, Julian thought to himself, you were right. I did find love and kindness. But Mira, you didn't tell me that this world has even greater suffering. I never deserved happiness. Gramps said he was the first to go. If that's true, then whose life was lost back on the slave ship? It must have been my own. Nothing else makes sense. I died on that ship. I'm only been given a temporary life thanks to everyone else's power. I'm not like the people of the village. 100 people lost their lives on that ship, and I was the last to join them. I'm only here to make sure Diana has a future. Once my work is over, I'll return to the sea with the others. That's why I don't need to be happy. There's only one thing that matters. I have to be ready to give my life fighting for Diane's sake. And with that, Julian steeled his resolve.
After this incident, Elstree returned to the palace. She had to report what happened to the Lord, but this time, alongside the Lord, there were his personal guards, the Black Knights, as well as several other people sitting around the table. There were 4 women who Elstree referred to as the sorceresses, or the witches. She could feel the weight of the situation. The king, hearing news of his son's demise, said, "Arcos, of all my children, my blood flowed most potently through his veins. He had power, and yet that strength brought forth great arrogance. Despite that, I had confidence that he could handle this. I suppose that confidence was misplaced. How unfortunate." Elstree then continued, "The boy carrying the child of prophecy lived in that village. It seems he's fond of it. Let us take the villagers hostage. If the boy does not comply, we shall kill them one by one. Surely the boy will turn the baby over to you." Hearing this, the maid whispered to Elstree, arguing, "You swore no harm would come to them." To which Elstree coldly replied, "I don't care about that." The sorceresses hearing this, they mused at how nasty Elstree could be. On the other hand, the king didn't seem to like this idea. He said, "Choose your words wisely, prophetess Elstree. Are you advising me to kill my own subject in pursuit of a single enemy?" The moment he said that, before Elstree could even realize it, he had already vanished from his seat and appeared in front of her. Even the sorceresses were caught off guard at his speed. Putting his hand on Elstree's shoulder, he said, "Sacrificing his people is a disgrace to the virtue of a king. Harming my beloved subjects is unforgivable. The child of prophecy and her young guardian, we shall leave them be." "My lord?" Elstree couldn't believe what the king just said. He then continued, "I have faith in your prophecy. If that babe is truly destined to kill me, then she will appear before me in due time. Should that time come, I shall settle this myself. I have lost my beloved son. I alone have the right to end this." As he said that, he walked away, ending the meeting. Elstree had no choice but to adhere to his order. After that, Arcos's maid and Elstree walked together. They talked about how the Western battle had intensified with the departure of Arcos, though they heard the Margrave had stepped in to handle the conflict, so they wouldn't need to worry about it for the moment. Elstree then turned to the maid. She said, "I'll leave the young lady in your care, Zira. She must already have begun throwing a tantrum by now." Arcos's maid, whose name was Zira, answered, "Of course." Later that day, we got to find out who the lady they Elstree referred to was, as we saw Zira confronting a young girl who was shouting, throwing stuff all over the room. She said, "Nonsense! That's impossible! My brother can't have been killed. There must be some mistake." Zira tried to calm her down. "Lady Lacrima, calm down. You will hurt yourself." This girl, Lacrima, seemed to be Arcos's sister, as she could also activate power with a similar marking to Arcos. She shouted,
Do you even know how I feel? Arcos was the only person who cared for me in this whole palace, and now I'm all alone." "Worry not, my lady. I was appointed as your attendant. I will be here for you." Hearing this, Lacrima calmed a little. She asked Zira, "Who was it? Who killed my brother? I'll make them pay for what they've done." Later that night, we could see Elstree meeting up with Zira, Lacrima, and one of the Black Knights. Standing before them, Elstree said, "Even if it means disobeying orders, I shall put an end to the wretched prophecy. To protect my lord's honor, I shall sully my own hands." The other three heard that, but they didn't respond. Elstree then continued, "Move in secret. Tell no one, not even the king. Gather this country's most skilled and powerful assassins, mercenaries, killers, monsters, heretics. It matters not who they are. The child of prophecy must die." And so, the bloody crusade begins.
Back in Julian's place, at his house, in the backyard, we could see Angval's grave sitting peacefully beside Mira's grave. One by one, those who taught Julian's selfless love left him behind. Inside the house, Julian was talking about how he would take Diana and leave the village. He asked Titi what she wanted to do. But before Titi could respond, Julian said, "I'd rather you didn't come with us. As long as Diana is alive, they'll be hunting me down. If you stay with us, they'll harm you too. That's why. That's why I want you to find happiness without us." Titi stayed silent for a while, then said, "Angval, she was smiling, you know, at the very end. I have no idea what made her smile like that. I don't believe Angval never blamed you or Diana for what happened. That's just not who she was. You know that, right? I don't think any of this is your fault either." Hearing this, Julian put on a guilty expression. He said, "But I do. I blame myself. Would any of this have happened if you hadn't helped us back then? If we had never met, Angval would probably still be alive. She would have been happy." But Titi insisted, "I'm going with you no matter what you say. If they want to kill us, I'll become strong enough to make them regret it. Anyways, do you really think you can travel and take care of Diana all on your own? Do you know a thing about babies? There's no way." Hearing this, Julian couldn't argue back. Then Titi continued. Her eyes saddened. She said, "Or maybe you'll get it if I say it like this instead. Please don't leave me alone." Hearing this, Julian said, "That's not fair." With that, the three of them decided to leave the village. Back to the royal castle, Elstree's party continued with the meeting. Zira said that it was no easy task to find gifted ones, those who were blessed with power like that of Julian and Arcos, without them having any connections to the palace. And those who satisfied the requirements, most of them were unwilling to reveal themselves. It would be a time and money-consuming problem. On the other hand, Elstree insisted that they couldn't involve any gifted ones within the palace, or else their plan would be exposed, to which Zira said that that plan was unrealistic. Just then, someone walked in. "Shall we lend you a hand?" It was the sorceresses. One of them said, "It seems our interests align, to a point, of course." Sorceresses, Elstree glared. Looking at them, she said, "Your very nature makes you just as much a target of elimination as that babe." On the other hand, the sorceress said, "With our power, we could make light work of convincing those gifted ones you seek." Hearing this, Lacrima answered, "Sounds good to me. Why not work together? That Julian brat killed Arcos, remember? There's no such thing as too much power. There's no need to be so picky, is there? I don't trust them at all, but we should put them to use." How feisty. "I think we'll get along," the sorceress said, but Lacrima just told her to drop dead. Hearing this,
Elstree accepted a temporary alliance, though she thought to herself, "Once we've gathered enough gifted ones, we'll have no need for them. We can have whoever we find kill them off later." She then continued, "Once we've assembled our forces, we shall begin our operation." Back in the village, Julian and Titi were bidding farewell to the villagers. Joseph assured him, saying they would take care of the house and the graves. Everyone in the village wished them a safe journey. Even Joseph's father was there to see them off. "Look after yourselves," he said, to which Julian asked, "Gramps, don't forget about us, okay?" "Don't worry, the fog's been cleared from my mind. Y'all have my thanks." Marie was also there. She let Joseph hold their baby, while she came to give Julian, Titi, and Diana a hug. She said, "Whatever happens, you need to stick together. It's a rare and precious thing in life to form a bond like yours." And with that, they finally set off. Titi asked Julian where they were going, to which Julian said he was thinking about heading to the west. Though the west wasn't exactly safe and the border was still a war zone, Julian was thinking about crossing over the border. In other words, he wanted to flee to an enemy country. This scared Titi, but Julian reasoned that though it might be dangerous, but they would never be safe if they continued to stay. That was why he would find a place they could call home, and he wouldn't give up on a world where Diana could be happy. Then, with home at their backs, they set off.